Act 1 of The Times by Arthur Wing Pinero. The persons of the play.
Percy Egerton-Bompas, MP. Read by Adrian Stevens.
Mrs Egerton-Bompas. Read by Sonia.
Howard, their son. Read by Dale Burgess.
Beryl, their daughter. Read by the Story Girl.
Countess of Ripstow. Read by T.J. Burns.
Denham, Viscount Lurgershall, her son. Read by Thomas Peter.
The Honourable Montague Trimble. Read by Todd.
Timothy McShane, MP. Read by Alan Mapstone.
Mrs Hooley. Read by Cliona Woodbyrne.
Honoria, her daughter. Read by Linda Olsen Fitak.
Miss Cazalet. Read by Jenn Broda.
Lucy Tuck. Read by Annie Mars.
Chelf. Read by son of the Exiles.
Stage directions read by Larry Wilson. The Times, Act 1. The scene represents a richly decorated and sumptuously furnished room in the London house of Mr. Egerton-Bompas, MP. It is prettily divided by 3 arches resting on elegant pillars, and wealth and luxury are evident in all the appointments of the room, which looks bright and cheerful in the afternoon light of early summer. The door opens, and Jelf, a manservant in livery, introduces Lady Ripstow, an aristocratic-looking woman of about 50, and her son Denham Lord Lurgershall, a young man of 27, with a determined manner.
Lady Ripstow and Lord Lurgershall.
I am aware, my lord.
I think Mrs Egerton-Bompas will see me.
I'm sure she will, my lady, if she's at home.
She's not at home this afternoon, I know, but she may be indoors.
I'll ask Codrington, my lady.
Codrington?
My mistress's maidwoman, my lady.
He goes out.
My mistress's maidswoman? The wives of drapers have their comforts, Denham.
My dear mother.
Is not Mr. Bompas a draper?
Mr. Egerton-Bompas.
Egerton.
Mr. Egerton-Bompas is a draper in a large sense.
He has a dozen shops all in a row, you mean?
14, as a matter of fact.
Surely that makes him 14 times a draper.
At any rate, Beryl is not a draper.
She is a draper's daughter. If she becomes your wife, she will still be a draper's daughter. If children are born to you, they will be a draper's daughter's children.
They will be amiable and beautiful, like Beryl.
But not perfectly patrician like yourself. To call an illustration from the drapery business.
Pray, mother.
Beryl is cotton. You are silk. Each material in itself is estimable, but cotton and silk beget satinette. Did you see your father this morning?
Yes, in bed.
Will he countenance your engagement by calling here?
He will think it over.
Was he very distressed at your account of Beryl's parents?
Acutely, I admit.
Of course you made him aware that Mr. Bompas sits for the Northern Division of St. Swithin's?
Of course.
That afforded him no relief?
Not perceptibly.
You emphasized on the conservative side of the house?
Yes, but my father's theory is that a common man's profession of conservative principles is merely a device to rub shoulders with superior people.
Theodore is penetrating.
And he anticipates that every conservative politician who has any respect for himself will soon be driven to extreme radicalism to find decent companionship.
Your father will never call here, Denham.
So be it, mother.
And you are determined to make Beryl an offer of marriage?
Oh, quite.
Beryl, a sweet, unaffected girl of about 20, enters the room attended by Jelf, and greets Lady Ripstow and Denham with a pleasant frankness of manner. Beryl addressing Lady Ripstow.
Victor, the hairdresser, has been washing Mamma's head. Would you like to come upstairs?
If I may.
Beryl to Denham.
Excuse me.
Lady Ripstow quietly to Beryl.
Lurgishal wishes to talk to you, I know. Let the servant show me the way.
Jelf.
Lady Ripstow goes from the room with Jelf in attendance, leaving Beryl and Denham together.
I have been answering invitations from Mamma. Look, what a wearisome affair is a season, isn't it?
A season?
I don't mean either of the 4 seasons sent by heaven. I mean the 5th, made by man.
The one season honoured by a capital letter.
And called the season. Ugh.
I know you care very little for gaiety.
And the gaiety of climbing a flight of stairs to clutch at a haggard hostess on the landing. Do sit. We both have to tread a great many stairs tonight, I expect.
Are you going to Lady Orleans by any chance?
No, we don't know her. I mean, of course, she doesn't know us. This is our lot.
Reading from a tablet.
The Horace Bennets, the Stratfields, Mrs. Peter Catthews, music at the Verulam Club, the Spratt Thompsons. Lighter than I thought. Shall we pass you on any of those stairs?
I shall be at Mrs. Catthews about 11.
A trifle early for us.
Early?
We used to go very early to such places and stay right through. But now that Papa has got on, we arrive late everywhere and murmur an apology. Oh, don't laugh. If you realised as I do the sham, the falseness of this sort of thing, you wouldn't. You couldn't laugh. You'd cry. And one's life seems to be made up of parade and pretension, and sometimes I feel it is more than I can... Forgive my complaining to you.
You forget I am as hemmed in as yourself, bound by conventionalism, fettered by fashion.
You could revolt.
I might rush away to shoot big game in America. That would not be declaring independence of character. That would be escaping from declaring it.
Are you sure you have an independent character to declare?
At least I desire to behave as an individual. At present I am a phonograph rolled up in a coat. I don't aspire to great things, but I wish to speak of great things with gratitude, and of mean things with indignation.
It is good of you even to talk like this. And mind, if you ever break away, I'll pray for an adventurer.
You may begin today, then.
Why?
I am just about to break away.
What are you going to do?
Entreat to be allowed to pay my addresses to you.
Oh.
Now you guess the object of my mother's visit this afternoon.
We are in different worlds.
Let us come out of our little worlds and meet each other.
But I am nothing.
I have watched you. I know you. You are an individual. Consent to marry me, and you confer upon me the gift of individuality. Answer me.
Lord Lurgishall.
Denham holding out his hand.
My dear Beryl.
Beryl laying her hand in his.
Denham.
Percy Egerton-Bompas, a florid, good-humoured-looking man of about 50, with an air of great prosperity, but with an uneasy, assertive manner, enters the room together with the Honourable Montague Trimble, a pleasant-looking, bland little man, of uncertain age, scrupulously trimmed and tailored.
Clara, here's Monty.
Demonstratively.
Hello, Lurgishall. Delighted to see you.
Denham shakes hands with Bompas and exchanges nods with Trimble.
How are you, Trimble?
How are you, my dear L?
Bompas to Denham.
I thought my wife was here, but Berry will give you a cup of tea. We're always into friends like you, if we are in. But, Lord bless you, when we're not entertaining, we live in other people's houses. They won't let us alone.
Taking up cards of invitation from the table.
I'll be bound these are invites. What did I say? Look, here they come. Mrs Bulmersh, nice woman. La Comtesse de Favorot, a countess French, but still. Mrs Claude Cox, oh, stockbrokers, that's nothing. Here, Lady Prestwick. What do you think of that? Lady Prestwick at home, Grosvenor Gate. Do you go there, eh? Do you go there?
Lady Prestwick is my aunt.
Aunt, is she? Ah, then we shall meet you.
Laying his hand on Denham's shoulder.
It's nice for us all to be in the same set. Music, 10 o'clock. I don't suppose we shall be there for more than a minute, too many of these things.
Reading the card to himself.
Lady Prestwick, at home, Grosvenor Gate. Lady Prestwick.
Denham quietly to Bompas.
My mother is upstairs.
Lady Ripstow? With my wife? Ought I to go up? Ought I to go up?
No, don't trouble. The question will be referred to you by and by.
What question?
Whether you will sanction an engagement between Beryl and myself.
You? You in love with our Berry?
Yes.
You? Shall I tell her? Shall I tell her?
Shh, please. I've done that myself.
Bompas cannot speak from excitement, but he grasps Denham's hand as Mrs Egerton-Bompas, a bright, excitable, good-looking woman of 40, enters with Lady Ripstow. Mrs Bompas breathlessly to Denham.
Have you asked her?
Yes.
Is it all right?
Beryl has been good enough not to discourage me.
Oh, my dear boy, I can't help it.
She kisses him. Denham smiling.
Thank you.
He joins his mother, Beryl, and Trimble, who are chatting together in a group. Bompas, trembling with excitement, to Mrs Bompas.
Calm yourself. Calm yourself. Don't let them think we're honoured.
Oh, Percy.
Quiet, Clara. Tell Trimble to spread it about.
She joins the rest. Bompas to himself.
I'll drop a line to the Morning Post. The Times doesn't put things in when I send 'em.
Picking up a card of invitation.
Mrs Claude Cox at home. Wish she may get us.
He tears up the card and throws it into the waste-paper basket. Lady Ripstow approaches the table at which Bompas has sat down to write. Bompas writing.
Mr Percy Egerton-Bompas presents his compliments to the editor of the Morning Post.
Seeing Lady Ripstow.
Hey, I beg your pardon? It's Lady Ripstow, isn't it?
Shaking hands with her heartily.
How's Lord Ripstow? He and I will see more of each other now, I dare say.
Have you met Lord Ripstow?
Well, no, that is, I may have met him and passed him. Clara, we must fix a night for a little family dinner. No outsiders, just the family. Myself, Clara, Beryl, Howard, our boy, you know. Howard will run up from Oxford. That's 4 Egerton-Bompases. 1 Denham is 5. 2 Ripstows are 7.
I think we will defer any arrangement of this kind till Lord Ripstow has called.
Of course, Percy.
And now, if you will allow me...
What was I going to say? Oh, this is a big thing for Denham's future.
I trust so.
A father in the House of Commons, as well as one in the Lords, both fathers of the same way of thinking too, both hard and fast Unionists, both staunch Conservatives, the only political faith for an English gentleman.
Percy.
Bompas to Lady Ripstow.
Don't you see? As I've only one boy, and a good clever boy he is, thank God, I can keep an eye on your chick as well as my own.
Thank you. I have to call in Merworth Square. I'm coming back for Lurgashall.
She passes Bompas and speaks a word to Mrs. Bompas. Bompas, resuming his seat in writing.
And begs to inform him that a marriage has been arranged.
Lady Ripstow leaves the room.
Take Lady Ripstow downstairs. What are you thinking about?
Bompas rising.
Eh?
He runs out after Lady Ripstow. Trimble, leaving Beryl and Denham together, advances effusively to Mrs. Bompas.
Dear Mrs. E.B.
Oh, Monty.
You are very proud,
Yes, I am proud. Now what will my old schoolfellow Emily Spratt Thompson have to say? Oh, Monty, nothing on earth shall prevent my going to church next Sunday morning.
Let me see. I think
Yes, you brought him to my third reception last season. Bless you.
Beryl and Denham go from the room together. Trimble mournfully.
What are you so glum about?
Why, my dear Mrs. E.B., I suppose I experience that mixed sensation of pain and pleasure which the nurse feels when the infant she has taught to toddle wriggles its little fist out of her hand and scampers off unassisted.
You mean that now Barry is to make this tremendous marriage, we shall be able to run alone in society?
I am unselfish enough to hope so, dear Mrs. E.B.
But we're not likely to forget your little services, Monty.
No. You're too amiable for that. But I anticipate that your poor friend will not be quite so indispensable in the future,
Perhaps not in the sense you mean.
In point of fact, dear Mrs. E.B., the devoted nurse forfeits her place and her perquisites, and the thriftless, improvident old woman, if I may so allude to myself, deuced well can't afford it.
Nonsense. Doesn't Lord Morfett do something for you?
Dear Morfett pays the allowance I am compelled to make my wife, that's all. But as for the necessaries of life, I pledge you my word, there was a moment last September when the question of my giving up my little box in Scotland was really mooted. However, I was fortunate enough to get you and E.B. some pleasant introductions at Homburg, and the dear liberal fellow—
Yes, never mind that.
But now—
Shh. I'll tell Percy to be always very kind to you.
Dear soul!
Oh, I can't sit still, Monty.
She moves restlessly about the room.
I came here this afternoon to give you what I hoped would prove a piece of good news.
There is no more good news in the world.
No, not now.
Well, what is it?
The Maharaja of Shikapur has at last fixed a night to dine here.
What? You've got him?
After shocking difficulties.
Oh, bless you, dear man. Now, Emily Spratt Thompson, what will you have to say?
Bompas returns.
Percy, that nigger has consented to dine with us.
The Maharaja?
Yes.
No, has he? When?
The 20th.
Ours is the first private house this great Indian potentate will have dined at.
Certainly.
Triumph!
Led by some association of ideas, he has hitherto persisted in going every night to the Empire.
Percy, it must be a brilliant occasion.
By Jove, yes. Monty.
Command me, dear E.B. Now, Whom will you have to greet the great man? Your friends?
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 You see, one can always have friends.
But you want to let your friends see you've got the Maharaja.
No. They'll read about it in the papers.
I should like the best people in London.
The best we can get?
Clara, we will make this the dinner to which we ask the Ripstows, Lord and Lady Ripstow. We'll show them, hey? We'll let them see, shall we?
But you told Lady Ripstow that their dinner was to be a family dinner.
Yes, but I've been thinking they might expect to meet my relations.
I've already roughed out a few suggestions.
Good.
Monty is so useful.
Trimble consulting his memoranda.
Now there's old Lord Hipgrave.
Lord Hipgrave?
Lord Hipgrave? Phew!
I can get him.
I shall be happy to welcome Lord Hipgrave to my house.
He's not in demand just now, and will eat a good dinner anywhere. But he's still a great name, dear Mrs. E.B.
Tremendous.
I feel bound to tell you that he feeds in rather a coarse way.
Oh, disgusting.
Shh! He's a great name.
Trimble, reading from his notes.
And he begs that... oh, here it is. He begs that a dinner may not be held to constitute acquaintanceship.
Infernal impudence!
Brutes that dine at my table.
However, he's a great name. Well...
Sir Charles Farmiloe will come with Algy Fitzbray.
Excellent.
Just for fun, is the way they put it.
Cads.
They are mere boys, you know, and never open their lips. Then there's Charlie Spreckley. He will whip the thing up.
By Jove, rather.
Oh, he tells all these inimitable stories. They're in everybody's mouth.
Well, everybody's inimitable stories are in his mouth. Same thing. He's the best raconteur in society.
Bompas to Mrs. Bompas.
Knew we should get him some day.
But I ought to let you know, dear E.B., that Spreckley asks 25 guineas.
What?
From every house he goes to?
From some houses he goes to. It is kept absolutely quiet, of course. If such a thing got about, he might as well go on the stage at once.
25?
Yes, and you don't get his new stories for that.
Pay him 30. This must be a perfect dinner.
Now, the women.
That's always a little difficulty, You wouldn't care for a cheerful but perfectly ladylike actress?
My dear Monty.
I beg pardon.
Really, I would much rather ask my own personal friends.
Have you your visiting list handy?
She gives him a book from the table.
I dare say there are some good people here you don't know. I'll run through it in the next room. It may give my brain a fillip.
He goes out. Jelf enters.
Carriage is at the door, sir.
Jelf withdraws.
Going down to the house, Percy?
Yes, dear.
They sit cosily together, and she arranges a flower in his buttonhole.
May I drive you anywhere?
No, thanks. I've asked Miss Cazalet to pop in.
Kate Cazalet, the novelist?
Yes, I hear she's become the proprietress of a struggling little daily newspaper, the Morning Message.
Never heard of it. Won't live. A woman, too.
Isn't it ridiculous? Still, one may get one's gowns decently described. So I thought a cup of tea in a friendly, informal way.
Very good-natured of you, I'm sure. Give her my best wishes.
Mrs. Bompas laying her hand upon his arm as he is going.
Percy, dear, are they beginning to make you feel more at home in the house?
Well...
I wonder, darling, if your manner strikes them as being a little too pushing?
I shouldn't be surprised, but you see, it's the only manner I've got.
I know, dear, I know.
And it comes natural to me, and if I don't push, Clara, I feel somehow that I'm not in it.
But you are in it, Percy. We're wealthy, with a townhouse and a country one, with horses, carriages, servants, and twice as much of everything as we need. You should remind yourself of this constantly.
I do, every minute of the day. I believe I'm sensitive, Clara.
About what?
Perhaps it's the business.
The business will soon be a company, Bompas's Limited, and you the chairman.
Ah, but I've walked the shop a good deal in my time, and it's the same with a man that's been to sea. That tells its own tale. The other night I was bustling across the members' lobby, in my own energetic way, you know, and I heard a voice near me saying, "What price blankets?"
Infamous!
Of course it proceeded from an Irish member, but still.
Not Mr. McShane again?
Yes, that little beast, McShane. And then ingratitude hurts me. I've been in the house a couple of months, and what's the one question on which my opinion has been sought, the one point I've been consulted upon?
Yes, you've told me.
The quality of the table linen in the dining room. Ha! However, wait.
Bless you.
Well, goodbye, old lady.
Mrs. Bompas put in her arms around his neck.
Goodbye, poor old man.
Brushing a tear away.
After all, we're very lucky, aren't we?
Rather, and deserve to be.
Mrs. Bompas sits at the table, humming a song happily.
Oh, I want my copy of the Labour Bill. It's in the library.
Jelf enters quietly and approaches Bompas. They speak together, unheard by Mrs. Bompas.
Sir.
What is it?
Jelf, looking towards Mrs. Bompas.
Hush, please, sir. Mr. Howard's come home.
Mr. Howard?
I'm afraid everything's not quite right, sir. He cried when he saw me.
Where is he?
In the library, sir, with some ladies.
With some? Out of the way.
Bompas goes out hurriedly, followed by Jelf. Beryl and Denham come into the room.
Well, darlings.
Lord Lurgashall asked me to show him Richmond's portrait of myself, Mamma.
Bless her. And did you notice Holt's picture of Mr. Egerton-Bompas in the dining room?
Oh, yes.
Doesn't it speak? We intend bequeathing it to the Carlton Club.
The door opens. Jelf announcing.
Miss Cazalet, Miss Tuck.
Jelf shows in Miss Cazalet, a vivacious, handsome, well-preserved and richly attired woman of about 37, and Lucy, a pale, sad-looking girl wearing spectacles and almost shabbily dressed. Mrs. Bompas kissing Miss Cazalet.
So good of you to come.
What a charming house you have.
The Beryl.
How are you, dear?
Do you know Lord Lurgashall?
By his likeness to his papa, not otherwise.
Denham bows formally.
Lucy, dear.
To Mrs. Bompas.
I so want to introduce my niece, Lucy Tuck.
Mrs. Bompas to Lucy.
How do you do?
Poor Lucy has broken down woefully at Newnham. Her feminine intellect has drawn the line at Latin prose and left her rubbing menthol into her brows from morning till night.
Dear child.
Oh, Mamma.
Miss Cazalet to Beryl.
You girls are nearly of the same age. Do tell her there is something in the world besides a first class in the classical tripos.
Beryl to Lucy.
And have you a bad head this afternoon?
Oh, yes.
When did it come on?
The year before last.
The year before last?
It isn't of so much consequence now I've left Newnham. Only they say it makes me appear unsociable.
Miss Cazalet to Mrs. Bompas, who has been chatting with her apart.
1,000 congratulations! May I announce it in my paper?
Do.
Any date fixed?
Not yet.
By the way, I hope you all know that anybody who buys a copy of the Morning Message on or after Monday is bestowing a penny upon a hard-working, deserving woman. The Morning Message. Ever heard of it?
I must confess
I thought not.
Jelf enters carrying a silver tray with tea things. Beryl pours out tea.
Poor little journal. It's only 6 months old and very weak like a rickety baby. I'm going to nurse it into vitality.
To Denham.
Isn't it bold, eh?
Extremely.
You mean brazen.
Catching Beryl's eye.
2 lumps, please, dear, and cream.
You must be careful not to lose your money.
Oh, that's all right. A dear good friend in the city who believes in me has bought the paper for that.
Snapping her fingers.
And has given it to me as a birthday present.
Denham hands Miss Cazalet a cup of tea. She declines cake.
No thanks. I'm too full of the Morning Message to eat. Excuse my coarseness. My city friend furnishes the money article, naturally.
Denham to himself.
I'll be bound he does.
I do society, the opera and the play, and perhaps Ascot and cows.
Don't overtax yourself, dear.
Oh, of course I have a man editor, and all sorts of nice things of that kind about me, to save me the fag, you know.
Mrs. Bompas taking tea.
Thanks. And you think a woman really possesses the authority?
Authority? Why, the staff already kiss the ground I walk on. At 18 Boswell Court, 2nd floor, office of the M.M., I am a queen, my dears, inky but absolute. It's glorious.
And so on Monday...
And every morning you'll each buy the message, please. My message?
To each and all.
Will you? Will you, will you?
Certainly.
Certainly.
Thanks awfully. 3d.
Quietly to Mrs. Bompas.
Oh, may I speak to you, dear?
Quietly.
Miss Cazalet to Lucy.
Lucy, I want you to tell dear Mrs. Egerton-Bompas. Come here.
Miss Cazalet and Lucy talk confidentially with Mrs. Bompas. Beryl to Denham, handing his tea.
What is your impression of Miss Cazalet?
Denham sipping his tea.
Sweet.
Really?
The tea.
Who is she? I don't think we know her very well.
She is one of Sir George Cazalet's many beautiful daughters.
Quite a lady, then.
He was quite a gentleman.
What has been her career?
After poor old Sir George's death, she wrote realistic novels until...
Until
realism was exhausted, Moody alienated, and Smith shocked.
Why this journalistic craze?
Morphia, brandy, or ink. All uneradicable habits in a woman.
I see you don't like her.
Well, I'd rather you did not. Good gracious, it has just struck me. Suppose my mother finds her here. It can't be helped.
What do you mean?
It's an absurd old story, Beryl. May I confide it to you? This lady was once included in a country house party with my mother and father. It pleased my dear mother, who is a woman, to be ridiculously jealous.
Of Miss Cazalet?
The affair was perfectly foundationless, but my father, as an assertion of his independence, thought proper when he returned to town to call.
On Miss Cazalet?
Yes. Ever since then my mother has hated.
Not your father?
No, Miss Cazalet.
Hark! Is that Lady Ripstow's carriage?
Beryl and Denham look out of window. Mrs. Bompas to Miss Cazalet.
I declare it's quite sweet of you.
No, no, I regard my poor niece as a very precious responsibility. But she would be so much happier for some employment, not the newspaper. The mere mention of that makes her head fall in two. Something placid, something mouse-like.
Mrs. Bompas making notes.
I'll consult Percy. You suggest?
She would be a soothing companion for an old lady.
There are so many old ladies, too.
Yes, if they'd only admit it. Or as a tutor to some backward or delicate girl.
There.
You dear woman.
Producing a notebook.
What gown do you wear at the opera on Saturday night?
One of Mrs. Weatherhill's. The skirt is yellow silk brocaded with tiny pompadour bouquets of flowers. Round the hem, 3 festooned flounces of pale yellow chiffon.
Jelf shows in Lady Ripstow and withdraws.
Has Lugashall gone?
No.
Miss Cazalet looks up from her notebook. She and Lady Ripstow recognize each other. Mrs. Bompas to Lady Ripstow.
Let me introduce my friend, Miss Cazalet.
Miss Cazalet offering her hand.
I think we've met before, haven't we?
Lady Ripstow regards her with a cold stare, then turns to Denham.
Denham?
Miss Cazalet to Lucy.
She cut me. That woman cut me. Oh, if I ever have the chance.
Bompas enters the room, his face pale, his hair disordered, his manner much discomposed.
Percy!
Bompas whispering to her.
Get rid of them! Get rid of them!
Lady Ripstow to Mrs. Bompas.
Goodbye.
To Bompas.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Lady Ripstow. Remember me to Lord Ripstow, I beg. Oh, what was I going to say?
Lady Ripstow goes out with Beryl. Denham shaking hands with Mr. and Mrs. Bompas.
We shall meet tonight, I hope.
Somewhere or other. Somewhere or other.
Denham goes out. Miss Cazalet shaking hands with Mrs. Bompas.
Goodbye, dear.
Must you go? So sorry.
Mrs. Bompas rings the bell. Bompas shaking hands with Miss Cazalet.
Good luck to your paper. Meets a want. I was saying so this afternoon.
How well you're looking. Goodbye.
Jelf appears and shows Miss Cazalet and Lucy out.
What's the matter?
The matter?
Mrs. Bompas shaking his arm.
Percy!
Trimble enters with a visiting list and some sheets of paper, but remains in the background.
Percy, speak to me.
Howard!
My boy, there's something wrong? You've got a letter from him. Percy, he's not ill. He's not...
Worse! Married!
Married? My child? Married?
Ha!
Married whom?
Say what? A nobody, a nothing, an ignorant, ill-bred hussy.
No. No.
A low trollop you daren't show to your friends, a slut that's not good enough for our kitchen.
Mrs. Bompas throws herself upon the settee in hysterics as Beryl enters.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Mamma?
My dear Mrs. E.B.
My boy. My child. My poor boy.
Be quiet.
What has happened?
Your brother has married somebody.
Married?
Monty, we can trust you. Beryl, hold your tongue.
Beryl to Trimble.
A little water.
Trimble runs out. Beryl holds a vinaigrette to Mrs. Bompas's nose.
Disgraced! Disgraced! Just as I was getting on.
Be silent, Papa.
Cards flowing in from the best people. The Maharaja about to dine here, and Lurgashall, just as we are engaged to Lurgashall. It will fall through.
Oh, don't. Look at Mamma.
Look at Mamma, look at me.
Trimble re-enters hurriedly with a glass of water. Bompas stretches out his hand for it.
Ah!
No, it's for your wife.
Oh, it will be broken off, our engagement to Lurgashall, broken off.
Mrs. Bompas recovers and sits up faintly. Mrs. Bompas to Bompas.
Tell me.
It appears that Howard hasn't been near Oxford for more than a couple of months.
But we've received letters from him written on his club paper.
Asking for supplies. Ha! He managed that.
Where has he been, Papa?
At that little out-of-the-way hole in Wales.
Llanothieth?
Llanillich, where he and young Parker and Giltspur went to read.
I told you I didn't believe in reading parties. He'd much better have come home to learn his lessons. I'd have found time to hold the book for him.
Well, the other fellows, Parker and Giltspur, returned to college.
Without Howard?
Yes, he made some excuse to remain behind.
Why?
Why?
Papa, don't.
My dear E.B.?
Why? So that he might marry his landlady's daughter.
His landlady's?
The daughter of a common creature named Dooley or Hooley, an Irish widow.
Irish?
A pauper who seems to have got stuck in the mud at Llanillich on her way from Ireland for want of funds. Funds? The dear lady's got another to keep now.
Oh, no.
Bompas staring before him wildly.
There will be one lodging-house at Llanillich where a young man is engaged to clean boots and windows.
Papa!
Really, E.B.?
Apartments for families, pleasant view of the glorious vale of Llanillich, door opened by my boy's wife's mother in curl papers, chambermaid my daughter-in-law, only lodging-house in the Principality with a butler, my son and heir.
Papa, you are exaggerating. If there is any truth at all in this horrid report...
Truth?
I am certain the reality is far less terrible than the story you tell us. Let us read it for ourselves. Show us the letter.
The letter?
Isn't there a letter? How do you know all this?
Oh, yes, of course. I haven't mentioned...
Howard Egerton-Bompas, a commonplace, heavy young man of about 21, looking very wretched and upset, enters quietly.
Ma!
Oh!
Howard!
I want to know what's going to be done.
Mrs. Bompas, kissing him.
My boy!
All right, Ma, dear. I suppose you've heard all about it.
Papa has told us.
Hello, Monty.
Good afternoon.
Here's a mess, Monty.
You are right, dear young friend.
Oh, Howard, whatever made you do a thing like this?
I dunno.
You must know, Howard.
Well, I suppose a sort of lonely feeling came over me. I dunno. And then I got fogged over my constitutional law. I dunno. And then my head seemed to swell. And then Honoria...
Honoria?
My wife.
Oh.
Honoria used to lay the cloth.
Yes?
Well, Honoria used to lay the cloth.
You said that, darling.
Well, Honoria used to lay the cloth. And so I married her at the registry office.
Not even in church?
I'm telling you, at the little registry office at El Bergeron. I can't get about. My chums never guessed I was in love, and my 2 witnesses were a deaf gardener and a chalk labourer. And I can hook it to Australia or the Cape, and our fine friends won't be a bit the wiser. And if people ask what's become of me, you can say, well, I don't know.
Beryl putting her arms around his neck.
Australia?
Oh, let a fellow breathe.
You stifle him, Beryl. Tell me, what is she like?
Jolly pretty, I think.
Is she fairly educated, Howard?
What does that matter?
Oh, Howard.
No, she's not fairly educated. I've tried to teach her how to spell a little, and I've found out I don't know how to spell myself. So I'm not fairly educated, and I suppose you call me a representative young English gentleman.
And the mother?
Mrs. Hooley?
Is she nice?
I don't know.
You must know, Howard.
Look here, one would think I was being ragged by the warden. I won't stand it. Recollect, I'm a married man.
Now then, how dare you?
You see, I'm upset. If you want to quiz my new people and disparage them, they're sitting in the library.
Here?
Mamma!
Percy, why haven't I been told this? I demand to see my son's wife. Take me downstairs, instantly.
No, not another scene there, with a couple of servants in the hall. No, Monty, you're a stranger. They won't howl so much with you. Get him out of the library and sneak him up here.
Trimble goes out.
Why didn't you bring your wife alone? Why the mother? Surely the mother would have kept for a week or two.
I didn't want to bring Miss Hooley. Do you think I'm a fool?
For shame, Howard.
Why, I hadn't the cash to bring anybody. I was stony broke. You can marry without extra expenses. It's Miss Hooley who's brought me. 3rd class, too. Like a cad.
I hear them. Quiet.
Is my hair all right, Beryl?
Yes, Mamma.
Trimble returns.
Come in, pray, come in.
Honoria, an ordinarily pretty Irish girl of about 18, rather showily dressed, and Mrs. Hooley, her mother, a genteel person of 38, not very tidy in appearance, enter timidly amid gloomy silence. They both have been weeping.
I think Mr. and Mrs. Egerton-Bompas would like you to sit down.
Bompas to Honoria and Mrs. Hooley.
Be seated.
Honoria and Mrs. Hooley sit and continue sobbing at intervals.
Mrs.
Hooley speaking with a slight brogue.
Hooley, Kathleen Hooley, widow of Captain Patrick Fagan Hooley.
Captain?
Captain of the Coast Guard at Kilbrain, north of Ireland. He fell into the water 15 years ago in time to be spared the trouble that's come upon us.
Trouble that's come upon us? You've brought it on us.
Indeed, I've not, ma'am.
Puh!
No, sir, I've not. And though I'm a widow in trifling circumstances, and haven't a living relative but my one child, I wouldn't have sought to better myself by bringing distress upon gentlefolk, not to wear a coronet upon my brow.
That's true, ma'am. It's been all the sly doing of me and the young gentleman. Why did I consent to it?
I was away from Clen Yelliot for a couple of days, ma'am, leaving the cottage in Honoria's keeping, while I took the cattle boat to Kilbrain to inquire after little furniture I had stored there years ago.
Yeah, bah.
And when I got home last night, slightly prematurely, I looked up at my cottage and saw but one light burning, and that in my own modest sitting room, and I said to myself, the young gentleman's fatigued with his reading, and he's gone to bed with an aching head. That's evident.
Well?
So I let myself in with my key and walked quietly into my modest sitting room, and there I saw Honoria on one side of the table, darning the young gentleman's socks, and the young gentleman himself on the other side, with a pipe in his mouth and his feet resting on the mantelpiece among my little ornaments and lustres.
Last night? You haven't lost much time in paying us a visit.
No, sir, because I thought the sooner the entire family had a meeting, the better.
The entire?
So that we might all look one another in the face, sir, as we are now doing, and put a simple question to each other.
A question?
The question, ma'am, what is to be done?
I'll answer that.
Papa, dear, let me make the first suggestion.
Sitting beside Honoria.
Oh, do please let me.
Clara?
Beryl?
It is that we answer the question, what is to be done?
Taking Honoria's hand.
By deciding to make the best of it.
Oh!
My dear young lady.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
Percy! Percy!
Beryl quickly takes Honoria and Mrs. Hooley apart. They are joined by Howard and talk together in whispers.
How dare she? A nice couple of children I've got. One marries a trollop, the other makes the best of it.
I don't know what's come over her.
Joining the others.
Beryl!
The best of it! The best of it! Ha! The best of it!
Glaring at Trimble, who is quietly eating lumps of sugar.
Complacent ass!
To Trimble.
Well?
My sweet tooth.
I'm glad my misfortunes don't affect you.
On the contrary, dear E.B., I was just thinking...
Thinking? Not a way out of it?
No. Of a way round it.
Eh?
Being a non-smoker, munching always helps me to ponder, and I was recalling a case in point.
A case in point? Case in similar?
Well, it was the instance of a dear friend of mine, a member of the upper house, by the by, a dear friend of mine whose boy, having fallen in love with a common little provincial shop girl, did the wrong thing by her, and surreptitiously married her.
That's similar. Appear to. It happens to the best of us. Well?
Well, that girl was unencumbered by relatives.
Like?
Like these good people. It was hearing the widow say she's minus relations that put this old affair into my head.
Taking another piece of sugar.
Excuse me.
But what was done? What was done? What was done?
Why, my dear old friend, Lord... But I must be careful. My dear old friend hit upon a somewhat daring idea. He never revealed the circumstance of his son's clandestine marriage.
What good did that?
Wait. Keeping this marriage a secret, he created for the poor girl, entirely out of his imagination, a decent, if not distinguished, parentage, and a thoroughly creditable past, into which, owing to its fictitiousness, it was naturally impossible for his friends to pry.
He pretended the girl was a lady, you mean?
Certainly, and he made her one. He took her to his heart, dear fellow, had her manners and her orthography duly polished, and eventually he presented to the world, as the fiancée of his son, a young person fitted in all outward essentials to adorn society.
By Jove!
The wedding took place at St. Peter's, Seaton Square. Everybody was radiant and happy, especially the boy's father.
The father!
Yes, pardonably proud of having saved society from a scandal, and his son from a mesalliance.
But it was a fraud, a cheat, a humbug.
Well, not everybody was benefited. Of course, I really ought not to have mentioned it, dear E.B., only the likeness between the two cases.
But you wouldn't. If you had a boy who made a fool of himself, you wouldn't, would you?
Dear friend, I frankly own that in such a predicament I should do all a father could do to preserve his son's self-respect.
Oh!
It was in that parental spirit that I assisted my other dear old friend.
You helped him?
Yes.
Taking another lump of sugar. Bompas to himself.
No, you'd do it, but I wouldn't. After all, fair trade hasn't done so badly for me, and if it wasn't for Clara, I sometimes think I'd...
Mrs. Hooley's voice rises discordantly above the others for a moment.
Ah, Monty, tell me your plan again. Tell me again.
End of Act 1. Act 2 of The Times by Arthur Wing Pinero. The scene is still the reception room at the Egerton-Bompases. It is a summer morning a month later than the events of the preceding act. Mrs. Bompas sits alone meditating upon a letter she holds in her hand. She does not notice Jelf, who stands by the door awaiting her orders.
The bell rang, ma'am.
Eh? Oh, yes. Tell them upstairs that Miss Monttrafford's new governess arrives today at... what time? Where is Miss Cazalet's note? Oh.
Reading to herself.
Dearest Mrs. Egerton-Bompas, how delightful of you to offer to take my little niece into your household as Miss Monttrafford's help and companion. As for Lucy, she is dying to devote herself to your son's charming fiancée. I'll bring her to you myself tomorrow morning at 11.
To Jelf.
Miss Tuck will be here at 11.
Yes, ma'am.
Jelf leaves the room as Beryl comes in, dressed for going out.
Good morning, Mamma.
Are you off out, dear?
Lady Ripstow and Lord Lagershall are coming for me at 11 to take me to see Burne-Jones's pictures.
You haven't kissed me, Beryl.
Beryl kissing her forehead.
I forgot.
Mrs. Bompas to herself.
Forgot.
How is Papa today?
I've not seen him yet. The house set late and he slept in his dressing-room to avoid disturbing me. How unkind you are to all of us, Beryl.
I can't help it.
And how rude you were to Mrs. Monttrafford and Miss Monttrafford at Lady Cleaver's party last night.
Mrs. Monttrafford? You mean Mrs. Hooley?
Hush.
Miss Monttrafford. My brother Howard's wife.
Be quiet.
I feel I can't remain quiet. I have an impulse to rush out to the balcony or onto the doorstep and cry out to the passers-by, "Look here, this is a house of imposture."
Don't shout like that.
And when Denham calls... Denham, who believes so in my truthfulness... I am in danger of looking straight into his eyes and saying, "Denham, Howard is married. Married. And this is the house which contains his young wife and Mrs. Hooley, her silly, simpering mother."
You'll be heard.
Yes. This is the house where two humble, ignorant people are dressed up and made images of and called Monttrafford. But they are nothing but Hooleys.
Oh, you'll drive me distracted. I shan't be able to struggle through the season.
Beryl picking up a newspaper.
More of it. Have you seen this?
No. Yes. I don't know. Of course I have.
One of the high life paragraphs in this week's Womankind.
Reading.
The elements of romance are certainly not wanting in connection with the approaching marriage of Mr. Howard Egerton-Bompas, the son of the popular member for St. Swithins, and the wealthy Miss Corisande Shafto Honoria Montrafford, whose advent with her delightful mother has already done much to interest and charm society. How awful!
Monty, Mr. Trimble, made these people Mount Traffords. It has been considered advisable. It is scarcely for women like ourselves to question the wisdom of men like Papa and Monty Trimble.
Beryl reading.
We can only hope that Miss Montrafford will some day find leisure to publish a brief history of her extraordinary missionary labours among the American Aborigines.
We were obliged to account for her past in a creditable way. We have been guided solely by Monty.
Beryl reading.
Surely even the varied pages of fiction present nothing more fascinating than the picture of this philanthropic widow lady and her fair-haired daughter dwelling for years in almost intimate association with the rude remnants of the scattered Indian tribes.
Don't, Beryl, don't.
I will.
Hush, here she is.
Mrs. Hooley?
No, Mount Trafford.
Hooley.
Mount Trafford.
Beryl flourishing the journal.
Hooley, Hooley, Hooley.
Mrs. Hooley and Honoria, both fashionably dressed, enter the room.
Good morning, Mrs. Egerton-Bompas. Good morning, Beryl dear. Did you fear you'd never see us this beautiful morning? Oh, the fascinating party last night.
Honoria speaking with her mouth full of sweetmeats.
Good morning. Will you taste my pralines?
Mrs. Bompas and Beryl decline. Mrs. Hooley posing.
I'm anxious for your opinion on my new frock. My maid declares it's Honoria's sister I'll get taken for.
I'm afraid the woman means the gown is too youthful for you.
And why should I have years put on me when I'm just commencing to enjoy life? Do you fancy I require taking in anywhere?
Mrs. Bompas arranges Mrs. Hooley's dress. Honoria to Beryl.
Another day, and you'll not be good friends with me?
I want to be friends with you. Very badly. Only friendship must be founded on mutual respect, mustn't it?
No. Must it?
Popping a sweetmeat into her mouth.
Sure, I don't know.
Of course it must. And how can we respect each other?
And why not? Will you tell me?
Why, you couldn't respect a girl you found telling a lie, could you?
Oh, yes, I could. If I liked her well enough.
You never see things rightly.
Showing her the newspaper.
Look there. You couldn't be good friends with a girl who lived and acted all that, could you?
Oh, Mother darling, here's more about us. Here's more about us.
Mrs. Hooley and Honoria read the paper together.
Ah, look at this now. Oh, the complimentary allusions.
See here, Mother. All the flattering comments.
Jelf enters, and at the same moment a few chords on a piano in another room are heard.
What's that?
Mrs. Cormante and her young lady assistants are here, ma'am.
He goes out.
The dancing mistress in the choral drawing room.
Sure, we're taking our lessons there now, because of the beautiful floor. Do you mind what follows the waltz this morning, Honoria, darling?
I do, Mother. The dance of the sylphs.
The dance of the sylphs?
It's an elegant pas de deux for two people, Honoria and me.
You?
And why not? It'll be wanted during the season, Madame Cormati says, for the cause of some blessed charity.
The piano is heard again.
We're coming, Madame Cormati dear, we're coming.
Mrs. Hooley and Honoria leave the room.
Oh, Mamma, Mamma!
Jelf appears at the door.
Mr. Trimble is coming upstairs, ma'am.
How I detest that man!
She goes out as Trimble enters gaily.
Ah, dear Mrs. E.B.
I am glad you're in town again.
My poor dear brother is so much better that I was able to get back last night, just in time to pop in to Lady Cleaver's. It cheered me to meet you all there. Ah, the anxiety of nursing the sick, terrible. Dear E.B. not visible yet, I hear?
No.
And our new dear friends, Mrs. Montrafford and Miss Montrafford. What progress have they made in the arts and graces while I've been away? Are we putting the finishing touches?
The air of a waltz is heard.
They are taking their dancing lessons now.
Good. And the younger lady's French. We are helping her with a few indispensable phrases.
I was obliged to peg off the French governess in a hurry.
Why?
She pried too much.
Dangerous. Get somebody else.
I've engaged Miss Tuck, Kate Cazalet's little niece.
The relative of a friend? Is that quite judicious?
The poor girl always has a headache and seems too spiritless to be inquisitive.
Well, then everything is going on charmingly.
Eating a lozenge.
Really, I am not a sentimental man, but I do think we ought to feel profoundly grateful.
Grateful?
When we consider how eminently presentable these dear people are. I watched them at Lady Cleaver's last night, and I felt proud of my small share in improving their condition in life. Honestly proud. Yes, dear friend, let us feel deeply grateful, unreservedly happy.
Monty.
You're not worried about anything, surely?
Yes. There's something I'm keeping from Percy.
Keeping from him?
Well, haven't told him. His temper has become so ungovernable since our misfortune that I'm almost frightened to tell him. Here, Monty, heaven forgive me for my vulgarity, but this confounded Irish widow has actually picked up a sweetheart.
No. Why didn't you write to me? Has it gone far?
He's after her every hour of the day. He left a note here yesterday. Here, with some flowers.
Who's the beast?
Why, the creature my husband hates of all men in the world. That's the reason I've held my tongue, hoping I was wrong in my conclusions.
Well, but who? Who?
The little reptile who ridicules Percy in the house. The member for Ballymorra.
Mr. McShane.
Timothy McShane.
Damn! Excuse my breach of manners. I haven't sworn for years.
Sit down.
Dear Mrs. E.B.
The silly woman met him first at Mrs. Shackleton's crush, the night Honoria made her debut as Miss Montrafford. Of course, after all, she's only 38, and she wore one of my diamond necklaces.
I know.
Well, the Sunday following I fell over them with their heads together at church parade. And this last week I've seen them everywhere. Picture galleries, shops.
Bless my soul.
And if they are really in love, don't you realize the volcano we're all sitting upon?
I certainly perceive.
That she's a weak-brained, vain creature with no prudence? No.
No invention.
And suppose the fool of a man proposes to her?
Why, you don't apprehend.
Suppose in a moment of middle-aged emotion she confided in him.
Confided?
Our secret.
Oh.
She couldn't marry without doing so. Monty, in mercy's name, shut your mouth and collect yourself.
My dear Mrs. E.B., I candidly admit this is a contingency which even I did not anticipate.
Jelf enters carrying a large basket of flowers.
For Mrs. Mount Trafford, ma'am.
Stop! Don't disturb Mrs. Mounttrafford now. Put it down.
Jelf deposits the basket on the table and goes out.
What did I tell you?
His card is attached to it.
I saw that.
Trimble reading card.
Mr. Timothy McShane. A message. In pencil.
I thought so. Read it.
Forgive me, dear Mrs. E.B. Certain things I cannot do.
He hands the basket to Mrs. Bompas. She reads the message.
Ah.
Pray, relieve my anxiety.
Shall present myself in the course of the day to settle matters.
This gentleman is unmistakably serious in his intentions.
Advise me.
Dear E.B. must put his foot down at once.
Yes. But what a scene there will be. Who is to tell him? Monty, will you?
No, you break the ice. I must not be suspected of a desire to unduly intrude.
Jelf appears.
Miss Cazalet, Miss Tuck.
Bother the people. At this moment.
Miss Cazalet enters with Lucy Tuck. Jelf withdraws. Miss Cazalet kissing Mrs. Bompas.
Dear Mrs. Egerton-Bompas.
So pleased to see you.
I've brought my little mouse. How do you do, Mr. Trimble?
We meet too seldom.
Lucy to Mrs. Bompas.
I will do my best to be serviceable to you and Miss Montford, is it?
Yes, Mounttrafford.
You don't know how much it means to me to feel independent.
Child.
I mean, to feel myself not a burden upon my aunt.
I'll call Honoria.
She opens the door.
Honoria? Oh, that ridiculous old woman. The dance of the sylphs. Stop!
She goes out and the music ceases. Miss Cazalet to Trimble.
Now it's truly friendly of you to ask after the morning message.
One of the most valuable newspapers in London, I consider.
You know I call it my poor, ailing, rickety baby. Well, the morning message is teething. It may outlive its infantile complaints.
It must.
But oh, people won't advertise as much as a lost dog in it. And then I have such trouble with its nurses. I mean its editors.
Trimble was smothering a yawn.
I'm profoundly sorry.
The first was knocked down by a four-wheeler and is now contributing a depressing series of articles called Happy Hospitals. The second departed abruptly last night.
Ill?
Heartbroken. Wanted to marry, you know whom, and I'm left with a sub-editor with a large head and limited experience. Oh, all my life I've tired of a new toy after a fortnight, and I've been the real-live proprietress of this influential journal for a whole month. Ah!
Honoria enters with Mrs. Bompas. Miss Cazalet kissing Honoria.
My dear Miss Mountford.
Lucy and Honoria shake hands. Honoria to Lucy.
I'm glad you've come.
Oh, thank you.
We'll have a fine time of it if you'll not bother me with your instruction. Have a praline.
Honoria, take Miss Tuck upstairs yourself and make her feel at home.
I'll do that.
Honoria and Lucy go out.
Let me see my little mouse's gilded cage. May I?
She follows Honoria and Lucy.
Oh, all these people.
To Trimble.
Monty, find out if Percy is in the library yet. If so, tell him I must speak to him at once. At once.
Bless me, yes, at once. Dear Mrs. E.B.
What now?
I don't think I should make such a very close friend of Miss Cazalet.
She makes herself a friend.
I should check it. I always recommend that friendships should be regulated with a view to future disagreements.
But we are not going to disagree.
I hope not. I'm sure she's not a person one would derive any pleasure from offending.
Oh, try and find Percy.
Ah, dear E.B.
He goes out as Jelf appears at the door.
Lady Ripstow and Lord Lurgishall are waiting for Miss Beryl in their carriage, ma'am.
I'll find Miss Beryl and bring her downstairs.
She goes out quickly. Jelf at the door.
I wasn't aware that your ladyship was coming up.
Lady Ripstow and Denham enter. Jelf withdraws.
Yes, Denham. I have indeed observed a serious change in Beryl.
It worries me dreadfully, mother.
Coolness of manner.
Towards myself.
Even to me. An abruptness of speech.
To both of us.
Followed by a suffusion of the eyes.
For the life of me, I can't guess the reason.
Ah, but I can.
Mother?
Unless I am gravely mistaken, the pardonable cause of Beryl's distress of mind is... Will you hear it?
Go on.
It is that, notwithstanding all the diplomatic advances of the Egerton-Bompases, your father has never called.
Bah!
Denham!
Miss Cazalet enters and is momentarily disconcerted at seeing Lady Ripstow and Denham.
Oh, how do you do? And how do you do, Lady Ripstow?
Miss Cazalet.
And how is Lord Ripstow?
Denham placing himself between Lady Ripstow and Miss Cazalet.
In spite of advancing years, Lord Ripstow has only one infirmity, Miss Cazalet.
Only one now? And that?
The infirmity of forgetting certain former acquaintances.
Or of brooding over them. Poor old age.
Lady Ripstow to Denham.
The second time this has occurred.
I hear her niece.
Before today's over, Mrs. Egerton-Bompas shall know that if that woman is received here, I will never enter this house again. She shall choose between me and Miss Cazalet.
Mrs. Bompas and Beryl enter.
Oh, my dear Lady Ripstow, Lord Lurgishall, Beryl.
Bompas, who is very excited, enters, followed by Trimble. Bompas kissing Beryl.
Ha! Berry, my dear, I've some wonderful news for you. Eh? Oh? How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? Glad you're all here. I've good news for everybody. Aha! What do you think? What do you think? Guess now. Guess. Guess.
Hush. Percy, what is it?
My chance has come.
Chance?
Why, a great compliment has been paid me. An enormous compliment. Tonight, you know, finishes this big full-dress debate on the Irish question, and the whips have asked me to speak.
Oh, Percy!
To speak!
To Denham and Lady Ripstow, shaking hands with them suddenly.
I didn't shake hands, did I? Excuse me.
Addressing all.
There have been people who've said, Egerton-Bompas will never do anything in the house, won't he? I've thought, once in, he'll never open his mouth. Thousands have said that. Ha, ha, ha!
Shaking hands with Miss Cazalet.
Did I shake hands? My head's so full of my speech. It isn't that success alters me at all. Here, you'll all want to come down to the house tonight, of course.
I fear.
Oh, I can manage it. There's nothing I can't manage. I've got seats in the ladies' gallery, and another man will give me his. That'll be 2 Egerton-Bompases, 1 Ripstow, 1 Cazalet.
At what time are you likely to speak?
About 9 o'clock.
During the dinner hour, isn't it?
Yes.
Struck by the look on Miss Cazalet's face.
Oh, well, some men like speaking during the dinner hour, eh?
Delightful. Such freedom from interruption.
To Mrs. Bompas.
Send word to Boswell Court, dear, when and where I'm to join you. Wire, Fever Heat, London. Don't stir. Goodbye, all. Or telephone 3033. Lady Ripstow.
She goes out. Bompas to Lady Ripstow.
I've the notes of my speech in the library. I've been up half the night over it. I expect you'd like to hear.
Pray, excuse me this morning. Lurgashal, are you ready?
Going out, Berry? Proud of your father, hey? Proud of him?
Oh, Papa.
May I put Lady Ripstow into her carriage?
To Mrs. Bompas.
Your opportunity.
Lady Ripstow and Trimble go out. Bompas slapping Denham on the back as he passes.
Lucky dog.
Goodbye, children.
Beryl and Denham leave the room together.
Now.
Clara, aha, old lady, give me a kiss.
She kisses him.
So they found me out at last, hey?
Found you out?
Found out my value. This is a gigantic opportunity, by Jove it is. Nice flowers you've got here.
Percy, dear.
First of all, Clara, I mean to let that little beast McShane have it, straight from the shoulder.
Percy, I want to...
Bompas selecting a rose and putting it in his buttonhole.
Who sent you these? Lovely perfume, straight from the shoulder. Mr. Timothy McShane hasn't nicknamed me Blankets for nothing. Blankets!
Percy!
Hey?
Turning the basket of flowers about.
I'm looking for a bit of green.
I've something to tell you that may put you out.
Things are going too well for that, old lady. What is it? A big cheque or a...
Reading the card attached to the basket.
Mr. Timothy McShane. Mr. Timothy McShane? Clara?
Mr. McShane left that, or sent it.
The coward! The worm! So he guesses I mean to have a slap at him tonight, does he? And he thinks to quiet me by sending you a few poultry?
He tears the flower from his coat and is about to attack the basket.
No, they're not sent to me.
What do you mean?
They're Mrs. Mountford's.
Eh?
Read the other side.
Bompas reading.
Shall present myself in the course of the day to settle matters. What matters?
Love matters. He has fallen in love with Mrs. Mountford. Percy!
What's been going on?
Nothing. Not much. They were introduced to each other at Mrs. Shackleton's. Since then, they've met here and there, occasionally. I didn't attach much importance to it at first. I tried not to, knowing how the very name of McShane infuriates you. But now the matter has grown too serious.
Serious? Serious?
Yes. Yes, because you see, Percy, you see...
See? What?
That if he proposes to her, as he evidently means to...
Marriage?
Of course, marriage. Then, Percy, then she would either have to refuse him or to tell him.
To tell him? Tell him? Ah!
Percy, you mustn't give way to these uncontrollable fits of anger. We never calculated for this. We forgot she is not at all a bad-looking woman.
Cat! I hate her! A simpering cat!
We mustn't be upset by this trifle. We must send for her and coax her.
Coax her? Cat!
And when Mr. McShane calls...
I could see him strangled on the floor of the house, I could, and he dares to come after my widow?
Not your widow.
She's ours, body and boots. We bought her, I bought her, and paid for her.
Not so loud.
And now she'd get me into a mess, would she? She'd expose me, would she? Me and my family, she'd ruin me, ruin me!
Percy, these rages are dreadful.
Old Mother Hooley, cat!
You who declare you'll someday attain the highest position, you'll never do it with such a temper.
Won't I? Won't I? You'll see if I don't. You'll...
There. Hush, hush. You're all of a tremble.
McShane? Blankets?
Sit down, darling, and talk it over with Clara. That's right. That's right.
He sinks onto the settee in a heap.
Now you're yourself again, aren't you?
McShane and our cat?
We'll soon put matters straight. You and I, old man. You and I.
Trimble enters quietly. Trimble to Mrs. Bompas.
Well?
He's had one.
Bad?
Shocking. Percy, darling, here's Monty.
Bompas raises himself slowly and looks at Trimble. Trimble taking a lozenge.
This has rather upset you, dear E.B.
No, not very well. Overwork. What's got to be done about this? What's got to be...
Dear friend, there's not the remotest cause for discomposure. In the first place, allow me to ring the bell.
Mrs. Bompas smiling at Bompas encouragingly.
Monty is so useful.
Having summoned the servant, I suggest you give instructions that everybody is distinctly out to Mr. McShane.
Out.
Out!
Jelf appears.
Look here, if a man named McShane presumes to show his...
Percy!
Jelf, if Mr. McShane calls, you know him.
Short gentleman with flowers, sir.
Short!
Hush!
You are quite right. Out. No matter whom he inquires for. Out.
Out.
Out!
Not at home, sir.
Jelf withdraws.
I've done that.
Now, all you have to do further is to see Mrs. Montrafford.
Cat!
And, in a few well-chosen, temperate words, inform her that this sort of thing emphatically will not do.
The music is heard again.
What's that?
She's taking her dancing lesson.
Bompas makes excitedly for the door. Trimble stopping him.
No, dear E.B. You must pledge your word that you will conduct this interview in a reasonable, moderate,
statesmanlike
fashion. Certainly, statesmanlike.
Statesmanlike? I understand. You shall see.
Good.
Bompas to Mrs. Bompas.
You said my temper would keep me from attaining a big position?
Yes, but...
You did. Well, you'll see whether I can command myself.
That's right, dear E.B.
Bring her in, Monty. Percy Egerton-Bompas has no dignity, no self-restraint, hasn't he? I'll show you.
Trimble opening the door and calling.
Good morning, dear Mrs. Montrafford. Ah, you almost tripped.
The music stops abruptly, and Mrs. Hooley appears in the doorway. Mrs. Hooley, breathlessly.
Oh, Mr. Trimble! Oh, the intoxication of the dance!
Trimble goes out.
It's one trifling movement I'll never conquer. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sure, the and 4 will break the heart of me.
Trimble returns. Trimble to Bompas.
I've dismissed Clemente.
Mrs. Hooley, practising.
1, 2, 3, and...
Be seated, ma'am.
Oh, the turn you gave me.
Mrs. Everard Shafto Mantraford,
Yes?
a basket of flowers has been left for you at my door.
A bouquet?
This basket of... Where is it? Where is it?
All right, dear. Here.
She pushes the basket from beneath the table where she had concealed it.
Here.
Bompas snatching the basket.
It's thrown me out. Thrown me out.
Mrs. Bompas quietly to Bompas.
No. Capital, Percy.
Excellent beginning, dear friend.
Attached to this basket, Mrs. Mantraford, I find a card.
He looks vainly for the card, which has been left in Trimble's hand.
Certainly, a card.
A card?
Where's the thing gone to? Where is it?
Are you looking for the card, E.B.?
Bompas, grabbing the card from Trimble, was smoothing it out.
Looking for the...
Percy.
Dear friend.
If, when... Thrown out completely.
Hand it to her.
Leave me alone.
Giving the basket to Mrs. Hooley.
There, ma'am.
My card.
Take it.
Mrs. Hooley reading the card.
Oh, look at this now. Oh, the politeness of it. Oh, the...
Bompas silencing Trimble and Mrs. Bompas.
Don't interfere.
To Mrs. Hooley.
So, ma'am, so, Mrs. Mantraford, this is the return you make me.
And I should like to know, Mr. Egerton-Bompas, what you've got to complain of.
Complain of? Who has rescued you from obscure poverty, ma'am? You and your brat.
Percy.
E.B.
Silence. Who has received you into his domestic circle, his sacred domestic circle? Who has placed you upon a social level with his own family, mercifully thrown the veil of oblivion over your humble origin, and opened to you the gates of the most exclusive society in the world?
Quite so, dear.
This is admirable.
Who, placing his son's happiness above every other consideration, has consented to an alliance between that son and your daughter? Who?
And indeed, Mr. Egerton-Bompas, sir, I'm not an ungrateful lady.
Show it. Prove it.
But I confess, I'm not unwilling to relieve you of the burden of my keep and clothing.
I don't want you to relieve me of it. I've got you. I carry you upon my shoulders for as long as you choose to live.
Woman, you don't understand. You couldn't marry now without
entering into a long and painful explanation.
Phew! I'd explain everything in 5 minutes.
No.
Where's your refinement? Where's your womanly feeling? Where's your sense of shame?
They gather round Mrs. Hooley, protesting excitedly.
Have done! Don't bustle me!
She breaks away from them, pursued by Mrs. Bompas. Bompas to Trimble.
Well?
Dear friend, I frankly, I candidly admit that this is a complication which even I...
Howard enters in riding dress with a tradesman's account in his hand.
Morning, morning. Jolly in the park this morning.
Bompas turning upon him furiously.
Jolly in the park?
There, at me again. A nice time I've had of it this last month. Didn't you say I might come to you today for a cheque for my florist?
Get out of my sight!
Mrs. Bompas and Trimble lead Howard towards the door.
When do I do right? I don't know.
Bah!
I suppose I may mention there's somebody waiting to see you in the library.
Where the notes of my speech are laying about.
Who puts a visitor there?
At me again. Why, when I let myself in just now, I found a man on the doorstep who wanted to see Pa particularly.
Ah, what name, dear young friend?
McShane.
Bompas, Trimble, and Mrs. Bompas stand transfixed with horror.
What, now?
Did you say Mr. McShane? Ah, he's called to see my trustee.
Your trustee?
Well, he asked if Mr. Egerton-Bompas was my trustee. Sure, what was I to say, situated as I am?
Mrs. Bompas to Howard.
Get the notes of your father's speech from his table. He will break our hearts.
Wrong again.
He goes out.
I'll retire to my room while the delicate interview takes place. Am I to understand that obstacles are to be thrown in our path?
Bompas to himself.
In my house! Blankets!
Trimble to Mrs. Hooley.
Everything shall be done that gentlemen can do to protect the interests of a lady whose welfare they have at heart.
She goes out.
Percy, be statesmanlike.
Go after her. Keep your eye on her. Don't leave her.
Yes, yes. Oh, my poor Percy.
She leaves them. Trimble rings the bell.
Well? Well?
Dear friend, I candidly admit that this particular complication is one which even
Jail fitters.
Mr. McShane is in the library?
In the library, sir.
Show him up.
Jelf retires. Trimble nervously turns the key in the doors, leaving only one unlocked.
Monty?
You must be secured from interruption.
What's our attitude, our policy?
To keep them apart for the next few hours. Tomorrow we must get this ill-bred woman out of England somehow. Oh, really, I'm quite upset.
Stand by me, Monty, when the lies are wanted.
Trimble taking a lozenge.
Command me. Command me.
Monty, don't you think that in the highest social and political circles a man, even to maintain his position, may tell one lie too many?
Hush, dear friend. No one deplores a falsehood more than myself. But let us always remember, the demand creates the supply.
But isn't there one special moment in a man's life when he'd better resist the demand?
Resist?
Yes?
Oh, my dear E.B., in my own experience, there is more time wasted in resisting temptation than over anything in this world. Hark!
Jelf shows in Mr. Timothy McShane, a smartly dressed, eager, dark little man of 45 or 50, with a pale face, restless eyes, and a high forehead. He carries an umbrella aggressively.
Mr. Egerton-Bompas.
Mr. McShane.
McShane looking at Trimble.
Mr.
Montague Trimble, my friend and confidential adviser.
Howdy-do. What delightful weather we're.
Bompas to McShane.
Be seated.
Trimble quietly locks the door.
Mr. Bompas, your political convictions and my own are as wide asunder as the poles.
Bompas bows.
That is, so far as I have been privileged to gather. For hitherto your individual public policy has been one of intense, ardent silence.
Tonight, Mr. McShane, that silence is to be broken. Tonight?
Sir, I can promise you at least one auditor.
I thank you.
But, Mr. Bompas, apart from our political divergence, I've noticed that there has crept insidiously into our personal relations a rancorous animosity.
On more than one occasion you have thought it, decent to taunt me with my honourable association with, a branch of commerce.
Blankets?
I do not blush to repeat the word blankets.
Mr. Bompas, a moment has arrived when private differences must be suspended, antipathies softened. It is the first time in my life I've made such a suggestion to mortal man, but the circumstances are exceptional. Mr. Bompas, I have been fortunate enough to win the affections of the sweet lady who now compliments you by sheltering under your roof, of whose worldly interests I believe you are the legal supervisor.
Sir, you allude, I think, to
Mrs. Everard Shafto Mount Trafford. Kathleen. Mr. Bompas, to better enable me to pay such prolonged attentions to this charming lady as duty and inclination demand, and to give me the opportunity of entering freely this morning into the subject of the settlement of her pecuniary estate, I suggest there should prevail between you and me, in our private relations, peace. Peace, temporary or permanent. Perhaps it would be more convenient to both of us if we said temporary.
Bompas bows. They shake hands quickly and distrustfully. McShane then puts down his umbrella.
And now, sir, as Mrs. Mount Trafford is not in her minority, I propose that she be invited to join this agreeable meeting.
Eh? No, sir, out of the question.
Sir?
She has expressed a desire, not to be present.
Tuss. Kathleen will waive that objection.
Mr. McShane, allow me to consult my friend.
To Trimble.
Eh?
They whisper together.
Mr. McShane, you force me to acquaint you with a circumstance which I would willingly have kept from you. Mrs. Montresford is suddenly indisposed.
Powers, what is it?
The doctor hasn't seen her yet, but...
I think I heard dear Mrs. Egerton-Bompas mention the unpleasant word influenza.
You don't tell me that. Oh, and to think of her as she was but yesterday. Her gaiety, her flow of animal spirits.
Snatching up his umbrella and turning excitedly to Bompas.
She is in your house, Mr. Bompas. I warn you, sir, you are answerable for the welfare of this charming lady.
Bompas to Trimble.
Well?
A rude wild beast.
I won't realize it. This graceful, this vivacious lady, is she in bed or out?
Trimble and Bompas consult together.
Out.
Out.
In and out.
Restless.
Uneasy.
McShane shaking his fist close to Bompas's face.
Take care of her, sir. Take care of her.
Mr. McShane.
Really?
Mr. Bompas, I apologize for that gesture. It was uncontrollable.
Trimble prompts Bompas.
Eh? Yes.
To McShane.
May I suggest that under the circumstances it would hardly be
chivalrous.
Chivalrous to...
Spare your hints, sir. My distress of mind would not permit me to discuss Mrs. Mounttrapper's pecuniary affairs while that accomplished, that amiable lady... There's someone at your door.
The door handle is rattled, then a knock is heard.
Who is it?
Who is it?
Jelf outside.
Jelf, sir, with a note.
Oh, a note.
For Mr. McShane, sir.
For Mr. McShane?
From Mrs. Mounttrafford, sir.
Bompas and Trimble look at each other aghast.
May I ask if that servant is ever to be admitted?
Pardon me.
Trimble takes a letter from Jelf, then relocks the door.
Am I to be allowed to have my letter?
Trimble reluctantly hands the letter to McShane, who opens it. Bompas to Trimble.
Ass!
What could I do, E.B.?
From her to him, ass!
McShane, reading to himself.
Meet me today, usual place, same hour, Kathleen.
He refolds and pockets the note. Bompas to Trimble.
What's in it? What's in it?
Mr. Bompas, I have the honour to wish you good morning.
Extending his hand.
Temporary.
I'll take Mr. McShane downstairs.
McShane passes out and Trimble follows.
Oh? What's in it? What's in it? What's in it?
Mrs. Bompas enters quickly.
Percy, I'm mad with anxiety. I've been listening at every door trying to catch a word or two. He's gone. Tell me, Percy, tell me.
Why didn't you remain with her?
There was no necessity. I saw her let her hair down and begin to write her letters.
Yes, she's written one to McShane.
To McShane?
And he's got it.
No. What's in it?
Ah, what's in it?
Trimble enters, agitated.
Well?
E.B., I have committed an act, for you, dear friend, for you, which I shall always find it extremely difficult to palliate.
What?
Monty!
I am ashamed to say,
producing Mrs. Hooley's note,
that I have picked Mr. McShane's pocket.
Here!
Bompas snatches the note from Trimble. Mrs. Bompas looking over her husband's shoulder.
Oh!
I have no desire to pry into the contents of the communications addressed to another person. At the same time...
Bompas reading.
Meet me today, usual place, same hour.
What place?
What hour? Advise me.
Trimble ringing bell.
She mustn't go out, obviously.
Oh, the wretch! I'll turn the key off her door. I will.
She goes out.
Well?
Frankly, I candidly admit that this is a...
Jelf enters.
Jelf, Mr. Egerton-Bompas's orders are that you station yourself downstairs at the front door.
Yes, you and Chalmers and Hodgson, 3 of you.
No, Hodgson at the tradesman's door.
I said so.
And that from this moment no one shall be allowed to leave the house till you have first communicated with him or myself.
Understand?
Certainly, sir.
Jelf withdraws.
I've done that. I've done that. I've done that.
Mrs. Bompas totters in.
Clara?
Percy! She's a double-faced woman. She let her hair down to hoodwink me.
Hoodwink?
My poor husband. She has gone out.
The three are speechless for a moment. Bompas suddenly catching Trimble by the throat.
Devil! Devil!
Dear friend!
Percy!
Bompas shakes Mrs. Bompas off. Bompas to Trimble.
You tempted me! You have brought this on me! You!
He releases Trimble, who tumbles onto the floor.
Devil! But for you I should never have done all I have done. I should have stopped short at a great deal, but for you. And now, find this woman. Keep them apart. Bring her home before she meets him. She's mine. I've bought her. Bring her home. Bring her home.
Where am I to look for her, E.B.?
Bompas throwing the note at him.
There.
Trimble struggling to his feet.
Usual place? Same hour?
He staggers to the door as Howard, in immaculate morning dress and with a large flower in his buttonhole, enters with some sheets of paper in his hand.
Hello, Pa.
Bompas pointing to Trimble.
Go with him. Help him. Scour town with him. Find her. Bring her back.
Bring who?
Your mother-in-law. If she meets McShane today...
Snatching the sheets of paper from Howard's hand.
Not another bill of yours will I pay. I'll serve 'em all as I do this one.
Tearing the paper into pieces.
You shall starve, you and your trollop of a wife. You shall sell matches in the gutter, both of you. Go! Go!
Trimble goes out. Howard is following, but lingers doubtfully.
Oh, Percy, try to think all will end well. Be calm. Remember tonight, Percy, your speech.
My speech, yes, my chance, my great chance.
To Howard.
Well, why don't you go?
Pa, Ma told me to fetch the notes of your speech from the library. You've torn 'em up.
He goes out.
Oh!
Bompas and Mrs. Bompas go down upon their knees and collect the scraps of paper. End of Act 2. Act 3 of The Times by Arthur Wing Pinero. The scene is the same as before, but it is evening. Jelf enters, showing in Denham, who is in evening dress.
The ladies are dining, my lord.
Earlier than usual.
Yes, my lord, on account of going down to the House of Commons.
Ah, I forgot.
The master makes a speech tonight, my lord.
I know. Don't announce me. I'll wait about.
Denham strolls off, then Beryl, in dinner dress, enters. A piano is heard. Beryl to Jelf.
Who is playing the piano?
Lord Lurgishall, miss. His lordship's just come in.
Jelf goes out.
Poor Denham. I wonder how he will bear it when I let him know the decision I've come to, when I ask him plainly to release me from my engagement. I've made up my mind to do it. I'm sure it is the honest course, and I've made up my mind. It has taken me nearly a month to make it up. But after all, a month isn't much, under the circumstances.
Denham returns.
Beryl.
She gives him her hand coldly.
You are not dining.
I begged to be excused halfway through dinner. My head says there's to be a thunderstorm.
Ah. You're very anxious about the success of your father's speech tonight.
Oh, of course. He looked ghastly when he started down to the house this afternoon. By the by, I thought we weren't to see you till after the debate.
I'm here early. On a mission.
A mission?
I bring a message from my mother to yours.
Something that vexes you by your look.
I am vexed.
He is about to sit by her. She quickly places her fan beside her on the settee.
Beryl.
Well?
What is the matter?
The matter?
Between us. Almost from the very moment a month ago when you and I understood one another, almost from that very moment you have altered towards me. Why?
Why?
What have I done? What do I do? If you find faults in me, let me know them. If I disappoint you, give me an opportunity of raising myself to the standard you set up. Only teach me before you punish me.
Denham, how you jump at conclusions.
Conclusions?
Why accuse yourself?
Whom should I...
Isn't it barely possible that it is I who find it a little inconvenient to reach the standard of excellence which you raise?
You are laughing at me.
Not at all. You look for a wife who is to be unconventionally sincere, don't you?
Yes. And I look to you, Beryl.
Well, suppose, on consideration, I can't promise to be more than conventionally genuine.
Why, what do you mean?
Suppose, after all, I feel that I must drift the world's way, that I must preserve the ordinary hypocrisies, the everyday mental reservations, and hide something of my real self even from you, that I must take my place with the sort of girl who is fairly honest, moderately candid, pretty good, but, oh, so unlike what you deserve, Denham.
The voices of Mrs. Bompas, Miss Cazalet, and Honoria are heard.
Dear Beryl, let me talk to you again this evening. Where?
Go to the billiard room, 10 minutes from now.
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Bompas, Miss Cazalet, and Honoria enter, followed by Lucy. Mrs. Bompas to Denham.
You here, my dear boy? Why didn't you come to dinner?
Are you going to be our cavalier down to the house, Lord Lurgishall? Delightful!
Jelf and another servant enter with coffee. Beryl to Lucy.
Miss Tuck, you look lonely.
Lucy goes to Beryl and sits beside her. Mrs. Bompas to Denham.
A message from Lady Ripstow? What is it?
May I see you alone for a moment?
Of course. Before we go down to the house. We don't start yet awhile.
I'm afraid you too...
Yes, the thunder upsets all of us. Don't trouble about me. Talk to the others.
Coffee is handed round. Mrs. Bompas to herself.
Oh, why don't I hear something from somebody? What is happening all this while? Oh.
The servants hand coffee to Mrs. Bompas.
Jelf.
Yes, ma'am?
Has Miss Mount Trafford come in yet?
I believe not, ma'am.
Nor Mr. Howard?
Not yet, ma'am.
Are you sure Mr. Trimble hasn't called or sent any message?
Quite sure, ma'am.
She drops the cream jug with a clatter.
Take it away. Don't worry me.
The servants go out. Mrs. Bompas to herself.
That woman Hooley. Out all day. Howard. Out all day. Not a sign from Monty. What on earth is happening? Oh.
Miss Cazalet to Mrs. Bompas.
You ought to be very much obliged to me. I have persuaded Miss Mountfort to practice a few steps of the dance Cormonti is teaching her.
Bother.
Isn't it good-natured of her?
Very. So soon after dinner?
Miss Tuck, we left the music on the piano. Will you go and thump it over for me?
Lucy goes out. Miss Cazalet clapping her hands.
Places! Places!
To Beryl.
How sweet Honoria is, and Mrs. Mountfort.
They would be glad to hear you say so.
So unaffectedly natural. But there, think of their strange careers. Why, this girl and her mother might have been scalped years ago.
Mrs. Bompas to herself.
Oh, if they only had been.
Eh?
I didn't speak.
Dance music is heard.
My heart's beating.
Honoria dances gracefully, and while she is dancing, Trimble enters unobtrusively in morning dress, but dusty, disordered, and weary-looking. He touches Mrs. Bompas on the shoulder, and she utters a scream. Everybody is startled. Honoria ceases dancing, the music stops, and Lucy appears in the doorway.
Monty!
I beg pardon. I alarmed you.
Honoria, Miss Cazalet, and Beryl surround Mrs. Bompas.
What's the matter?
It's nothing. Don't notice me. I'm nervous tonight. Monty, I have something to arrange with you for Ascot Week. Here.
Let us all go to the piano. Beryl, Lord Lurgishall.
They go out and leave Trimble and Mrs. Bompas together.
Well?
Well?
Nothing? No news?
No. And you? Hasn't, dear Mrs. Montfrafford returned?
She shakes her head.
Singular. Painfully singular. Where's your son?
She shakes her head.
It was about noon when he and I set out upon our search. I lost him at 4:30, somewhere near the Burlington Arcade. He must be very tired. I haven't sat down since I started. Will you allow me?
As he sits.
Ah.
Taking a lozenge.
Dear E.B. has gone down to the house?
Yes.
If he had been at home, I should have hesitated about coming up. I find it difficult to excuse his attitude of this morning.
Poor fellow.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of Percy.
Oh, yes. When he returns, from what I still hope will be an oratorical triumph, I should like you, in justice to myself, to let him know that I have devoted my day to his interests loyally.
We are very much obliged to you.
No, no. After leaving your house with dear Howard, I found myself on the doorstep, facing a difficult problem. How to prevent a possible communication between two people who were to meet each other at an hour and place unknown to me. The further question, as to what the deuce I should do if I encountered them, did not fail to suggest itself.
Of course it was hopeless. Percy was in a frenzy.
Ultimately, I determined that, if I succeeded in my search, I would entertain one or both of the parties with whimsical stories while Howard dashed home in a cab to fetch dear E.B. This arranged, we rapidly touched at every place of rendezvous in the West End usually selected by lovers. Here I derived the utmost assistance from Howard.
There's a lot of good in that boy. But you've seen no sign of them?
Not a shadow. I suppose we were too late for him in one place and too early in another. Oh, it has been such an unsatisfactory day. Finally, Howard fancied he saw an Oxford man or something in Burlington Street, and bolted away. After that I fear my search lost method. But still I never sat down. I calculate I have done Bond Street 33 times. I became nauseated with repeated cups of chocolate at Charbonnel's, all swallowed standing.
But the result is nothing. Nothing.
Pardon me, dear Mrs. E.B. I have proved, I hope, what friendship is capable of. And, for the first time in nearly 40 years, I find myself at this hour not in evening dress.
Denham enters.
I beg pardon. I thought perhaps...
I'm off, my dear L.
To Mrs. Bompas.
Goodbye, dear Mrs. E.B. I must be at the opera tonight. There's a new tenor. It's a disgrace that this big debate in the House clashes with Othello. Lots of people are very angry about it. Love to E.B.
He goes out. Mrs. Bompas to Denham.
You want me, my dear boy?
Denham producing a letter.
I'm very sorry to have to be the bearer of this for my mother.
For me?
You have never been told, I think, that my mother has a strong aversion to Miss Casserly.
Good gracious me! No.
That refers to it.
Oh.
I wanted to see you before you read it, to say this. The letter is my mother's, not mine. Any request that it contains is made solely by her. Any threat that she holds out she will execute alone.
Threat, my dear boy?
I fear you will find something of the kind there.
He kisses her hand.
But I beg that you will believe me, for Beryl's sake, always dutifully and affectionately yours.
To himself.
The billiard-room, Beryl said, in 10 minutes.
He goes out. Mrs. Bompas reading rapidly.
Lord Lurgasol will explain, if required, my reasons for the grave exception I take to the lady I have more than once encountered at your house. Let me say, with every amiable sentiment, that my acquaintance with you must be suspended until you undertake to close your doors upon this lady. Oh! I need scarcely add that upon your decision now rests the question as to whether Lord Ripstow will ever call. Faithfully yours, Victoria Ripstow. Oh, oh, in all the world is there a more unlucky woman than myself? Every hour a new trouble, and now Lurgasol's mother, the very best person we know, too. Oh!
Bompas enters, breathless and excited.
Hello?
Percy?
Don't be frightened. I've arranged with the Whips to be away from the house for an hour. I've come over so fidgety about Mother Hooley. Cat! Is she back?
No, nor Howard.
Oh!
Monty looked in to say he'd had no luck.
Yeah.
Percy, is Mr. McShane in the house?
No, not yet. I can't make out what's going on. I can't make it out. But there, I'm a fool to think of 'em. Don't mention 'em again. Don't let me mention 'em. I'll think of nothing tonight but myself, and my chance.
That's right.
Look here. Now I'm home, I'll jump into my dress clothes. I always speak better in dress clothes, don't I?
Yes, yes.
I look more aristocratic in them, don't you think? Don't I look more aristocratic in my dress clothes?
Yes.
Then why don't you encourage me? Why don't you...
He sits down and begins quickly sorting and arranging the notes of his speech.
My speech. 1, 2, 3, 4... Where's 5? Where's 5?
How poorly you seem.
My brain's boiling. 8's gone. This is tremendous chance. 8?
You've eaten nothing.
No, 9.
Have a sponge cake.
Sponge? Yeah. I try to masticate a chop down there, but I shall speak better on an empty stomach, shan't I?
Stamping his foot violently.
Shan't I speak better on an...
Yes.
Then why don't you encourage me? Why don't you?
Oh, Percy, I've got a horrible dread that our luck's changing.
Changing? Do you call this encouraging me? Let me go and dress.
Stay. Look.
Showing him the letter.
Here's Lady Ripstow at it now. It appears she hates Kate Cazalet.
Let her. We don't care.
But she threatens not to know me if I continue to receive Miss Cazalet here. What shall I do?
Do! Throw Kate Cazalet over, of course.
Oh, Percy!
Kindly, if the ship rides lighter without her, over with her.
How can I?
Clara, look here, I'm getting desperate. This ingratitude of Mother Hooley's is making a different man of me. Cat, even you won't recognise me soon. I tell you, if we get well out of the scrape that we're in, I'm going to alter my line of conduct for the rest of my life.
Oh, yes, let us both do that. Let us.
For the future self, I mean it. No more studying other people. Simply ourselves. So if Lady Ripstow or any other person of title objects to a woman friend of ours, over she goes. Look out there. Over she goes.
Oh!
I'll go and dress. Be ready for me in a quarter of an hour, and I'll take you down to the house. Give me a kiss, old lady.
She makes no response.
Oh, this is encouragement, isn't it? Very well, I'll encourage myself.
Snapping his fingers.
That for Mother Hooley, Cat. That for McShane. I defy everybody. Nothing'll ever hurt me. I'm a successful man. Nothing'll ever...
He goes out.
Well, if this has to be done, I suppose Oh, how shall I manage it? No more lies if I can help it. Not another lie will I tell that isn't strictly necessary. Why shouldn't I speak plainly to Kate Cazalet? As a woman of the world, she'd understand that I daren't offend this aristocratic old reptile. That's it. I'll throw myself on her indulgence.
Opening the door and calling.
Miss Cazalet, dear.
Miss Cazalet enters, followed by Honoria and Lucy. Mrs. Bompas to Miss Cazalet.
Come upstairs. I want 5 minutes of the cosiest chat with you imaginable.
Just what I love.
Oh, dear.
You're faint.
It's only the thunder. Come upstairs.
My dear Mrs. Bompas, let me tell you an excellent thing for nerves.
They go out. Beryl enters.
The billiard room in 10 minutes. Poor Denham.
She steals off. As she does so, Howard is heard outside the door singing a comic song in a maudlin way.
Hark! What's that?
Why, I do believe.
Lucy goes to the door and looks out.
Oh, come away, Miss Montresfort. Oh, do come away.
Lucy drags Honoria across the room as Howard lurches in, drunk.
Oh!
Howard!
I'll go back.
Lucy to Honoria.
Oh, pray, come upstairs.
Ah, don't be alarmed, dear. I've seen him ill once before.
To Howard.
Are you aware of the state you're in?
Am I aware of state I'm in? You allude for the fact that I'm a little dusty?
Dusty, is it? I fancy you've been laying the dust pretty well.
Laying the... Good. Laying the dust. Good. Is there another Laying present? Or is it all you?
Sure, it's Miss Tuck.
Ow! Miss Tuck.
Staggering towards Lucy.
Of course, Miss Tuck.
Oh, no, please.
I recollect. Miss Tuck. Staying in our house, teaching on Riga.
He falls helplessly into a chair.
Come, let us help him to his room quietly.
I'll not lend a hand.
Oh, I know it isn't quite the way in which young women ought to occupy themselves, but suppose his people were to see him in this condition.
Let them. What do I care? It'll be a lesson to him. They think themselves mighty superior. Let 'em contemplate that. Many a lecture they've favoured me with on my behaviour. Let 'em look at that. I'm not to put my knife in my mouth at mealtimes. I'm not to sponge up my gravy with a crust in strange houses. Let 'em look at that. Oh, the impudence of it.
I don't understand what you mean. I think you're very hard-hearted.
Advancing to Howard and taking his arm.
Come upstairs.
Howard throwing his arms round Lucy.
Oh, my darling, my
Lucy releasing herself.
Ah!
Honoria boxes Howard's ears and shakes him.
What?
I'll teach you.
Wrong again?
Fondling a strange lady.
Strange lady? I thought she was you. Oh, when do I do right? I don't know.
Pray overlook it, Miss Muncherford. I'm convinced he didn't know the difference.
Sure, it's time he did then.
What the lady says is correct. Oh, I've had a dreadful month this last month. Oh, my darling, my darling.
Honoria caressing him.
Ah, did I strike your blow then, dearest?
Frightful blow.
Sure, I'm unconscious of what I'm doing when my Irish blood's up. You'll forgive, Howard?
Yes.
And you'll never reduce yourself to this state any more?
Never.
Ah.
They embrace lovingly.
Miss Muncherford.
Go away. We're all right.
I must beg you to remember that you are merely engaged to Mr. Howard.
Ah, mind your own business.
I owe a duty to those who employ me.
You've only got to teach me French.
Howard waving Lucy away.
French.
And to advise you on a course of general behaviour. Miss Muncherford, there are certain prescribed limits beyond which it is not decorous for a young person to step during the period of engagement.
Philo.
I feel you are travelling beyond those limits.
Howard kisses Honoria.
Mr. Howard!
She advances to Howard and drags him from the settee.
I'll tell your parents.
What? How dare you interfere between me and my good lady?
Howard.
I'll repeat, my good lady.
What are you saying?
This is my lawful wife. My precious wife.
Don't listen to him.
We are on our honeymoon.
Miss Muncherford.
Montreford. That's Mrs. Howard Egerton-Bompas.
There now.
Formerly Miss Norioli.
No, he's done it.
I'm sick of humbug and deception. I'm a married gentleman. Let all the world know it. I'm a young, married English gentleman.
Oh, Mr. Howard!
Noria, I know we can trust this sweet young lady. Have you got our marriage certificate with you?
Honoria produces an envelope from the bodice of her dress.
Have I got it? Sure it never leaves me, night nor day.
Handing a certificate to Lucy.
Look at that, and hold your tongue about it.
But this doesn't refer...
Yes, yes, my dear, and we're to be married all over again to make a fine tip-top match of it.
But were you never Miss Muncherford?
Not I, sweet.
Kissing Lucy.
Sure, I feel easier in my mind now that we've got one real friend in the house.
One real? My darling.
Now then.
Hark, I'm sure somebody's coming.
Honoria supporting Howard.
Hold up, dearest.
Lucy and Honoria lead Howard with difficulty to a door.
It's Monty Trimble's idea. Unbugging second wedding?
That's enough now. Drop it.
Oh, story. Everybody's shamed of horrid old mother-in-law.
Come on.
Oh, Mother Holy. Oh, Mother.
They go out, and as they disappear, Miss Cazalet enters in a towering rage, while Mrs. Bompas follows, attempting to pacify her.
Not another word. Don't speak to me.
Pray, try to see things in their right light.
In their right light, I am taken by the shoulders and turned out of this house.
No, no.
Kicked out of it to please that woman Ripstow. That's the only light in which I see things.
Trying to put on her mantle.
Confound the cloak!
Let me help you.
Ha! What a hurry you're in to see the last of me. Send Lucy to me. I'll take her away tonight. Oh, the insult! The insult!
Wait here till you have spoken to my husband. He will offer every apology.
Apology? Let the creature Ripstow apologize. Send Lucy to me.
Calm yourself. My husband is at home. I'll find him.
The insult! The insult!
How truly unfortunate. Wait. Percy!
She runs out. Miss Cazalet seizes the pillows from the settees and the books from the table and flings them about the room.
What can I do? What can I do to pay out this viper Ripstow? If I can't revenge myself on her, I shall become frantic. Oh!
Lucy, still clutching the marriage certificate, enters quickly.
Lucy?
Oh!
What's wrong with you?
I'm so upset.
Upset?
I don't know whether I'm doing my duty here. This seems like such a strange household.
Ha! So I think.
Do you know they are already married?
Who are married?
Young Mr. Howard and Miss Muncherford. Oh, I oughtn't to have told you.
Go on.
You won't repeat it, will you? And what's more, she isn't Miss Muncherford at all, and never was.
Lucy!
Snatches the certificate from Lucy's hand.
What have you got there?
Lucy attempting to recover it.
Oh, no! Oh, my head!
Miss Cazalet reading.
Marriage solemnized at the Register Office in the district of St. Michael's, Abergaron, in the county of Carnarvon. Howard Bompas. Honoria Hooley. What's the meaning of it?
I'm dreadfully afraid it's a mesalliance.
A mesalliance?
Yes, and poor Mr. and Mrs. Egerton-Bompas are trying to give a good aspect to the matter by celebrating a second marriage. Oh, don't you feel sorry for them?
Awfully. And this This is the family into which the son of my old friend Lady Ripstow is about to enter?
What are you laughing at?
Come home.
Home?
Miss Cazalet crams the certificate into her pocket.
You can tell me all you know about this sad affair in the cab. Quick.
But I don't wish to.
Come.
The certificate. Give it to me. Let me return it.
When I've done with it.
No, no.
Now, Lady Ripstow.
To Lucy.
Come home.
She pulls Lucy to the door, and they go out. Then another door is open, and Mrs. Bompas's voice is heard. Mrs. Bompas outside.
Percy! Percy, make haste!
She enters the room quickly.
Miss Cazalet! Dear Miss Cazalet!
Bompas enters in evening dress, which has evidently been rather hurriedly put on. He attempts to make his tie into a bow as he speaks.
Where is she? Where is she?
She hasn't gone, surely. Miss Cazalet!
Don't upset yourself. Throw her over.
She must be looking for her niece.
She's of no consequence, I tell you.
Mrs. Bompas opening the door and calling.
Miss Cazalet?
That rotten newspaper of hers is dead or dying. It can't do us either harm or good. Over with her.
Miss Cazalet!
Mrs. Bompas goes out.
Come and tie my bow, Clara. Clara, come and tie my bow. Clara!
Finding she is gone.
Oh, Miss Cazalet, indeed. How my hand shakes. Over with her. I've made up my mind for the future self. I can't tie my bow.
Sitting helplessly at the end of the settee.
Clara, old lady.
Unnoticed by Bompas, Mrs. Hooley looking very much upset, and McShane, pale, speechless, and agitated, enter the room and stand gazing at Bompas. Bompas to himself.
I'll wait for Clara. Heavens, how does my peroration begin?
Turning over his notes hastily.
I'm forgetting my peroration.
Mrs. Bompas returns and sees Mrs. Hooley and McShane.
Percy!
Do come and tie my bow, eh?
See Mrs. Hooley and McShane.
Oh!
McShane fidgets with his umbrella.
Mr. McShane, I didn't hear the servant announce you in the proper way.
Sir, I let myself in with this lady's latchkey.
Mrs. Montresford, we rejoice to see you looking so much better, don't we, Clara?
Mrs. Hooley begins to sob demonstratively.
That is, I'm glad that the report of your illness, the influenza, was exaggerated. How it got about, I trust Mr. McShane. Clara?
Bompas, cease your dirty prevarication. I know all, sir.
Oh, and indeed, it's myself that told him the entire truth. Oh, why was I so impulsive?
Mrs. Kathleen Hooley, ma'am.
Bompas and Mrs. Bompas exchanging looks.
Mrs. Kathleen Hooley, you'll oblige me by keeping silent, if that's possible.
Loving me as he did, I never anticipated he'd take the disclosures in this way.
Mrs. Hooley!
Sure, Kitty Hooley's as fine a woman as Kathleen Mount Stratford, barring the fortune he looked for. Oh!
Bompas, when I met this lady today at our usual place of meeting, the National Gallery...
The National Gallery?
And when I perceived that she was in more than her usual state of health, I felt I was the victim of some despicable, underhand doings of which you were the originator.
I advise you to be careful, Mr. McShane. I really advise you.
But I was not prepared for the revelations of craft, cunning, and duplicity which were made over a cup of tea at a neighbouring restaurant.
Clara, note Mr. McShane's language. Note it.
I dashed down to the house to find you had skulked home for an hour. I followed you here. Now, sir, you will be good enough to ask these ladies to retire.
Sir, I request that you communicate with me only by letter.
You request, sir? You?
Mrs. Hooley clinging to him.
Ah, Tim, we'll go, darling. Don't let your temper rise. We'll go, darling boy, we'll go.
McShane releasing himself.
Kathleen!
Yes, I'll leave you. Oh, Tim, is it all over between us?
I can't say, Kathleen. It's a difficult position I'm in with regard to you. But I'll consider. There.
Why was I so indiscreet? Oh, the love I've thrown away this day.
Bompas to Mrs. Bompas.
Keep near at hand. Don't leave me.
I won't. We're in his power, Percy.
I know.
But be bold. Brazen it out.
Yes.
And then, if you can, buy him.
Yes.
My poor old man. Shriek if you want me.
Yes.
I mean, call out.
I know. Same thing.
Mrs. Bompas goes out with Mrs. Hooley. Bompas to himself.
Bold, brazen it out. Bold, brazen it out. Now, Mr. McShane, I ask the reason of this outrageous conduct. Conduct unbecoming a gentleman. Conduct which...
He sees McShane reading the notes of his speech.
What's that you're reading?
The notes of your speech, sir.
Put those down! How dare you! How dare...
What? Lift up your voice to me again, and I'll publicly proclaim you the mean, fraudulent trickster that you undoubtedly are.
Sir!
Raise your voice half a tone above your ordinary dirty conversational level, and tomorrow all London shall ring with the vile imposture of which you're guilty.
Ah, McShane, it's you who are violent, not I. McShane, let's talk the matter over quietly, shall we? Quietly, both of us, quietly.
McShane resuming his examination of the notes.
As I thought.
You've no right to read those notes, McShane. No right whatever. No.
A contemptible vituperation of the party to which it is my pride to belong.
That speech, sir, is an avowal of the convictions of a lifetime.
See page 3.
That speech contains a lucid exposition of my firm, undeviating political principles.
Your what?
Principles which have been the main guide and factor of a busy life. Principles which are...
McShane prompting him from the notes.
Which are as vital as...
That's it. As vital as the air I breathe. As the... What are you doing?
McShane is deliberately placing the notes in his breast pocket. Twilight is falling.
Bompas, you will not require these notes.
What do you mean? My speech! My speech!
You will not deliver this speech, Bompas.
Tonight! I speak it tonight!
No, sir, you do not, because from this moment you abjure all political principles which have been the main guide and factor of your busy life.
I?
From this moment you turn your back on conventions which are as vital as the air you breathe.
I do not!
You do! And in their place you will adopt the views and opinions and the mode of reasoning of the party to which it is my pride to belong. Bompas, you're ours.
Yours? Yours?
Yes, Bompas. From this time forth your sympathies, your aspirations, your instincts are purely Irish.
Bompas utters a low cry.
In the house and out of it, you're now a staunch, consistent, and, when necessary, an animated supporter of Joseph Finnerty and Michael James Shannon. Think yourself mighty lucky you're let off so pleasantly for the trick you've played me over the widow. My first unworthy impulse was to trumpet your rascality to the world.
Oh!
And then a finer, loftier inspiration came to me. To utilize you in the cause of patriotism.
No! No!
Don't imagine I'm proud of you. But the handsome and the regular contributions you'll make to our parliamentary fund will be acceptable, and the dirtiest votes count on a division.
Holding out his hand.
And so, blankets, permanent.
Take care! You can't do this! You shan't do it! I defy you! I defy you!
What's that?
No, no, I don't. McShane, old fellow, old chap, be open to argument. If you make a political turncoat of me, I shall lose all my big friends, nobs, nice people who'd be glad of any excuse to give me the cold shoulder. Don't do it, don't do it, just as I'm laying hold of their coat-tails.
I'm ashamed of you.
McShane, dear old boy, I will support your parliamentary fund munificently. I will. Only let me do it in a quiet, unostentatious, anonymous way, and don't stop me from abusing your party in the House. McShane!
What? You're asking me to be a schemer and a hypocrite like yourself, are you? No, sir. I am an injured man. My feelings are outraged, my affections misplaced. But it's a convert I'm making, not a victim. It's no use, Bompas, you're ours.
Clara!
To McShane.
You'd strangle my parliamentary career. Clara, you'd put your heel on the neck of a rising politician. Clara!
Mrs. Bompas enters.
Clara!
I know. I've been listening.
My chance!
Mr. McShane, the great opportunity of my poor husband's life.
Don't distress yourself, ma'am. We'll give him magnificent opportunities by and by. Long nights of 'em.
But this night? Man, haven't you any heart? We're all ready to go down.
I'm extremely sorry, but in view of his abrupt change of political views, it would be better for him not to go back to the house this evening.
Oh!
I will go down. I will.
If you do, mind, you'll follow us boys into the lobby?
Ah!
McShane to Mrs. Bompas.
Now d'ye notice how agitated he is? Let him have a quiet evening at home.
At home?
Bompas sinks into a chair, dazed.
Never mind, Percy. You used to be fond of your home.
Tomorrow morning I'll look in early and dictate a manifesto to his constituents. And now I'll hurry down and give the boys the intelligence.
Mr. McShane! Mr. McShane!
Be easy, ma'am. On behalf of Joseph Finnerty and Michael James Shannon, I promise you this. You're ambitious, I believe, you and blankets. Bompas?
I don't know. Perhaps. Yes.
Mrs. Bompas, in the future your house shall be the centre of a great political world. Your establishment the access of a mighty movement, your drawing-room a crowded salon, the meeting place of a powerful, irresistible party.
Party?
The party to which it is now your husband's pride to belong.
He goes out. It is now dusk. Bompas folding his arms and glaring wildly around him.
Mr. Speaker, sir, nothing but a stern sense of public duty, nothing but an acute perception of the obligation I am under to my constituents.
Percy, hush.
Nothing less would have induced me to follow the torrent of eloquence which has just preceded me with the feeblest trickle of my own earnest but inadequate oratory, conscious—
No, no.
Ha! These interruptions do not find me unprepared. I am not unnerved by the howling of Irish wolves.
For mercy's sake, be quiet.
Sir, if that expression is not in accord with the courtesies practised in this house—
What are you thinking about, old man?
If? Oh, Clara.
Yes, it's Clara. Clara.
Oh, my speech.
Jelf appears.
What is it?
The carriage is at the door, ma'am.
Mrs. Bompas to Bompas.
Shall I tell him?
With an effort, Bompas nods assent.
Your master does not go down to the house tonight.
Not, ma'am?
No. Send the carriage back to the stables. Turn up the light.
Jelf disappears quickly. The room is brightly illuminated by electric light.
Come, Percy, be a man. We're not crushed yet.
Not crushed yet.
After all, we've only changed our political views from purely conscientious motives. Heaven forgive us.
Yes, conscientious motives. That's it. Yes.
Besides, think, our danger is over. We've bought that little wretch's silence. We're safe. Our danger is past. We're safe.
Safe? Yes, of course we are. Safe.
Nothing stops us now.
Nothing.
Beryl will be married next month. Gloriously married. Our Beryl, Lady Lurgashall. Think of it.
Lady Lurgashall, the future Countess of Ripstow, our Beryl.
Old man, eh?
Ha.
They link arms, laughing and chuckling. Beryl enters.
Mamma.
We were just talking about you, child.
Mamma, I don't know how I am to tell you.
Tell me what?
Lord Lurgashall has just left the house.
Why, of course he was to meet us at—
No, you don't see what I mean. He has left this house forever. He will never return.
What?
I have told him that I cannot marry him, and our engagement is at an end.
Bompas advances excitedly to Beryl. Mrs. Bompas clings to his arm.
No, no, Percy. This shall be put right tomorrow. A lover's quarrel.
It is nothing of the kind. My mind is made up. I will help to deceive our set about Howard's marriage. You can make me do that. But you shall not make me deceive the poor fellow who wishes to marry me because of my honesty.
Ah!
Beryl!
Understand me. You shan't shake me. I mean it. I mean it.
She goes out.
Our children. Our
children. Oh, yes.
No, not our children. Not both of them. There's still Howard. Poor boy, he's been imprudent, but...
Sobbing.
He's a nice boy at heart.
Howard staggers on in evening dress, his hat on the back of his head, a large flower in his buttonhole, a cigar in his mouth.
That's right. Honoria. You practice your scales while I'm gone. Hello, Ma. You here? I'm off out for the evening.
Howard?
What's the matter? Hello, Pa. The servants say you're not going down to the House of Commons tonight after all. Funked it. Hey, funked it.
Oh!
So I've told Honoria to pound away at her scales for an hour or so while I have a look around. Bye-bye.
Mrs. Bompas seizing him by the lapels of his coat.
Wretch!
Bompas taking him by the coat collar.
Blackguard!
At me again? When do I do right? I don't know.
You're not sober.
No, I'm not sober. I've had a dreadful month this last month, and I'm drowning my misfortunes in the bowl. Let me alone.
Snapping his fingers in Bompas's face.
There, I'm my own master. I'm young, married English gentleman with university education.
He goes out. Mrs. Bompas and Bompas sit staring blankly before them. Honoria is heard practicing her scales in another room. Mrs. Bompas creeps over to her husband and puts her arms round him. End of Act 3. Act 4 of The Times by Arthur Wing Pinero. The scene is the same as before, but it is now early morning of the day subsequent to the events of the previous act. Bompas, still in evening dress, but looking very much crumpled, is asleep on the settee. Jelf enters whistling.
The governor? Why, he hasn't been to bed all night. Phew!
He is walking away on tiptoe when he meets Mrs. Bompas entering the room, dressed in a morning wrapper and looking pale and agitated.
Jelf, I am anxious about your master. He is not in his room. I can't think.
All right, Mum. There he is. He must have dropped off there.
Oh.
Jelf goes out.
What can he have been doing all the night long?
Turning over a litter of papers on the table.
To the electors of the Northern Division of St. Swithin's.
Bompas moans.
Poor old man.
Reading.
Gentlemen, actuated solely by conscientious motives.
Bompas mutters in his sleep.
He's dreaming. Hark.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Oh, dear.
Nothing but a stern sense of public duty.
That miserable speech.
Nothing but an acute perception.
Stop.
Shaking him.
Percy.
Bompas opening his eyes.
Hey?
Wake. Wake.
He starts to his feet.
Where are you going?
The division. The division.
No. You're at home. It's morning.
At home? Morning? I've been dozing.
Sees his notes on the table.
Gentlemen, actuated solely by conscientious motives. I remember.
He looks broken down and much older than in the previous acts.
What have you been doing all night?
Trying to furnish my constituents with my reasons for becoming a member of the Irish party.
Can't you manage it?
No, I began in the library, but my ideas wouldn't flow. I've started afresh in nearly every room in the house, but my ideas won't flow. I don't get any further than conscientious motives.
Old man, do you remember 20 years ago when you just sold our business at Kennington and bought the 2 shops which were to grow into our present colossal establishment?
Rather, as if it were yesterday.
And do you remember how we sat down together, you and I, and drew up an announcement to our old customers?
Yes.
Percy Bompas has the honour to hope
that in embarking upon his great enterprise in the West End of London,
he will not lose the support and goodwill of those old friends,
who have laid the foundation of his present prosperity. Ah!
Our ideas used to flow in those days, old man, didn't they?
I suppose it was because we were younger. Ah!
He sits beside her.
That was when we took a house at Haverstock Hill. Do you remember?
Do I remember? Our first home this side of the water.
How we have got on since then.
Haven't we? It was a nice house, though.
You think so, because we did so much to it ourselves.
I put up the short blinds in the bedrooms with my own hands, I know that. I preferred doing it.
I hung every blessed picture in that house. I can almost feel the blisters from the cord now.
I wonder what we should think of it all today if we could see it again.
Not much after this.
I suppose not. We've got on so since then, haven't we?
Rather. Ah.
She gently puts her hand on his.
Our first big 7:30 dinner party. Do you remember?
Oh, Lord, yes, Clara. Never mind that.
Well, dear, we were inexperienced then. We gave them plenty to eat, though, eh?
It took you half an hour to write each menu.
Part of the food was sent in, I recollect, and part of it was done at home.
It doesn't matter much now. Many that were there won't clatter another knife and fork, but to this day I regret the part of it that was done at home.
My face burns too after all these years when I think of it.
Do you remember where the cook's cap was found?
Be quiet.
That was the night, too, when we had one of our men from the shop with P. Bompas round his coat collar to announce the guests.
It seemed all right then.
Yes, by Jove, it's astonishing how we've got on since. Ah. Well, I suppose I'd better change my clothes.
Percy, old man, do you ever feel you'd like to go back?
Back?
I mean, to keep our experience, but to go back to the contented, simple part of the old times.
It's no good wishing that, Clara. When you've got knowledge, you've lost everything else. It seems to me there's only one thing to do in this world, to go on, even if you're on the wrong road. Clara, my dear, get on, get on.
Trimble enters clutching a newspaper and much agitated.
Here you are. Oh, dear friends.
Trimble!
Monty!
Have you seen it?
Seen what?
The morning message.
Miss Cazalet's paper.
Ah, anything about me?
Anything about you? Say us, dear E.B. It's all out.
Out?
What's all out?
The whole bag of tricks. And she has had the temerity to drag me into it. Me! Look, in the Everybody's Friend column.
Reading.
A fraud on society.
Great powers!
It is time that some light should be thrown on the projected marriage of the son of a wealthy member of Parliament and the daughter of a mysterious Hibernian widow, who is stated to have passed some years of her life in improving the condition of the Dakota Indians.
Mrs. Mounterford?
Wait. As a matter of fact, the accepted history of the widow's antecedents is pure invention.
You're so slow.
She snatches the paper from him. Mrs. Bompas reading.
A marriage has already taken place between the parties before the registrar of a remote district in Wales, and the second ceremony is a barefaced attempt to palm off on society the young woman and her mother, under assumed names, as people of some distinction.
The paper drops from Mrs. Bompas's hand.
Good gracious me! You're missing the most outrageous part of it, dear Mrs. E.B. This is the illusion which will rouse your indignation. Listen. We believe we are correct in stating that the audacious conspiracy owes its inception to an honorable dear friend of the young husband's family. There. Can there be any question as to whom that points? I've never been so upset. My position in society is at stake. What am I to do? Dear friends, really? Not a word of sympathy? Upon my soul, this is, I regret to employ the term, very like ingratitude.
Mrs. Bompas to herself.
Oh, after all, after everything, held up to the whole world.
Oh, naturally, the first step you will take is to deny these assertions indignantly.
Deny? They can be proved to the hilt.
Well, but at the worst, you can declare that you have yourselves been cruelly deceived.
No, I can't.
You can't? Dear friends, I admit that I am for once slightly swayed by personal considerations. Pray remember what you owe to me.
Who has betrayed us?
Obviously, McShane. That detestable widow must have told him, and he—
No, we've secured his silence.
You have?
Mr. Trimble, you are not aware that I'm a member of the Irish party?
No.
Yes.
And after the way I've laboured for you in the very highest conservative circles. Then the traitor must be here, in your own establishment, dear Mrs. E.B. You must put your finger upon him or her before we go further. Pray, let us summon every interested person.
Mrs. Bompas and Trimble pull the bell ropes.
What's the use of it?
The use of it? Dear lady, do try to consider the terrible position in which my good nature has placed me.
Jail fitters. Jelf to Bompas.
I don't know whether you'll see anybody, sir, but...
Jelf, your mistress desires to speak to Mrs. Monttrafford, Miss Monttrafford, Mr. Howard, and Miss Barrow, here, at once.
Yes, sir, but...
Do you hear? At once! Really?
Jelf withdraws.
Oh. There are certain contingencies which I believe even the keenest intellect... Good gracious!
What?
Why, look! What's the meaning of this?
Miss Cazalet enters, pale, agitated, and in tears.
Miss Cazalet?
You know what I've done?
Oh, you wicked woman! How can you show your face here?
You do know. Oh, I am so wretched.
Wretched?
Listen, dear. I don't mean dear. I mean Mrs. Bompas. I was quite mad last night. Mad with vexation, indignation, anything you like to call it. Just think, to be kicked out of a decent house by an old woman you hate. And even now, when I'm sorry, I could slap her in the face.
What have you come here to say? Not this.
Shh.
When I left here, I had only one idea in my head, to be revenged on her. Oh, if I could have got a hold of her husband, as I might have done years ago, what a fool I would have made of him.
Miss Cazalet.
Well, I rushed down to Boswell Court. You know, the office of the M.M., in a fury. I saw that by discrediting your family, I could humiliate the woman whose son is engaged to your daughter. And I scribbled those lines. I almost wrote them with my nails.
Cruel, heartless.
Then I supped at the club, off biscuits and champagne, and went home to bed. To bed! Look at the rings round my eyes. I declare I haven't slept a wink. Look here, I'm downright sorry. There. You've been very kind to me, you and your stupid husband. I beg your pardon, there he is. And I've behaved like what you please, to sacrifice you, to hit Lady Ripstow. So now, tell me what to do to put things right. I'll do anything while I'm in a penitent mood like this. Anything. Oh, I'm an inconsistent, miserable, ill-conditioned woman, and have been all my life.
Trimble to Mrs. Bompas.
Most fortunate. An ample apology to myself and others in her paper tomorrow will set things straight.
Never. Some busybody is sure to inquire further and discover the facts.
Of course. We must divert the suspicion from ourselves. I have it. She must publicly and explicitly apologize to some other family. It's all right. I remember a similar case in which I...
Taking a lozenge.
Now what you have to do, dear Miss Cazalet, is to place yourself unreservedly in my hands.
Your hands? What business is it of yours?
Dear lady, you forget I am the person most grossly libelled.
Oh, of course. I've mentioned you, haven't I?
Mentioned me?
Mrs. Bompas looking through the doorway.
Mrs. Monttrafford.
Trimble to Miss Cazalet.
Come into the next room, and I'll advise you in your terrible difficulty. Come.
Mr. Bompas, when I go down to the office, I'll instruct someone to write a short, complimentary leader on your last night's speech.
Bompas raises his head. She is startled at his appearance.
Whoa!
Madam, I never spoke.
Shh. He's a member of the Irish party. Come along.
As Trimble and Miss Cazalet go out, Mrs. Hooley enters, followed by Honoria and Beryl.
You've heard from him?
Him?
Tim, he's repented of his unkindness. He's...
Mrs. Bompas handing her the newspaper.
Look at this, all of you. Read it. Read it.
Mrs. Hooley, Honoria, and Beryl read the newspaper.
Now see what you and your daughter have brought to us.
Oh, Mother.
Oh, the unfavourable comments.
Who is it that has helped to bring this final disgrace upon us? That is what we want to know. Dishonourable as we have been, Mr. Bompas and I haven't quite deserved this. There, my heart's broken.
Mamma.
Go away. You've been against us all through. Your sympathy is no good. Pa and I don't want it.
Oh, the uncomplimentary allusions.
Beryl steals over to Bompas and sits beside him.
Berry!
Papa, dear.
Ah, you can crow over Ma and me now. This is your triumph. This is...
My triumph?
Slipping her arm through his and laying her head upon his shoulder.
Oh, Papa. Just think.
Lady Ripstow and Denham enter.
Lady Ripstow! Lord Lurgasol!
Beryl to herself.
Denham!
She goes out quickly.
Percy! Percy!
Bompas raises his head with an effort, then lets it sink again.
I am painfully distressed. You have seen that terrible woman's newspaper?
Mrs. Bompas nods.
To my horror, I find that one of the maids has allowed the wretched news sheet to be brought into my house. And so these paragraphs have come under my notice. Of course you give an emphatic denial to the hideous charges?
Mrs. Bompas trying ineffectually to rouse Bompas.
Percy! Oh!
Surely, Lurgashal. Ah, here are the two ladies who are implicated. Mrs. Montford, Miss Montford, I ask for your assurance that there's not the slightest foundation for these abominable insinuations.
Oh, the misfortunes that have come on us.
Mother, darling.
Mrs. Hooley and Honoria sit, embracing and weeping.
I understand.
To Denham.
Oh, take me away.
Lady Ripstow, you evidently don't know. Lord Lurgasol has not told you.
What?
His engagement to Beryl is broken off.
Lady Ripstow turning to Denham.
Broken off?
Last night.
Oh, my son, my boy. The relief is too great. I can hardly credit it. And to think that up to yesterday there was some question of Lord Ripstow calling.
She sinks into a chair. Denham to Mrs. Bompas.
Don't be alarmed. My mother is always like this at the end of the season. I think her drops are in the carriage.
He goes out. Lucy Tuck, pale, red-eyed, and trembling, enters quietly.
Miss Tuck.
Mrs. Bompas.
Child.
Oh, Mrs. Bompas, they think I've come back for my boxes. But please hear what I've got to say. I've seen the paper. This dreadful thing in the paper. It's my fault that it's there. All my fault.
Your fault?
Yes. When your son told me the secret of his marriage.
My boy told you? Howard?
Ah!
Howard enters, wearing a gaily coloured morning jacket.
Do you want me, Pa?
Do I?
Percy, no, no.
Here. What now? At me again?
I.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Bompas sinks back onto the settee. Honoria seizes Howard and drags him away.
Come away now.
When do I do right? I done...
The newspaper is put into his hands.
Oh, don't blame him. Blame me. For instead of keeping this secret as I ought to have done, I blurted it out to my aunt. And now, oh, will you forgive her?
Forgive her?
Yes, you must. A friend has just called in at our lodgings to say that unless every syllable of what Aunt has stated can be substantiated, she could be sent to prison for vindictive libel. To prison!
Certainly.
Lady Ripstow, I didn't.
And if ever a woman deserved such a fate...
Ah, no, but you wouldn't do it, would you? You wouldn't do it. Mr. Bompas, Mrs. Bompas, oh, please, you don't know.
Miss Cazalet enters, followed by Trimble.
Lucy!
Lucy, throwing her arms impulsively round Miss Cazalet.
Oh, Mother!
Mother?
Lady Ripstow!
Whispering to Lucy, disengaging herself.
You little... I knew you'd do this some day.
Lucy, whispering to Miss Cazalet.
I didn't mean to. It escaped me.
Hush! Run away, child. I'll follow you.
Lucy goes out with faltering steps.
Sweet girl, how fond we are of each other.
To Mrs. Bompas.
I'm teaching her to call me mother. You heard her? It is only affection's a little comedy, but the mere name soothes a lonely woman.
Ah.
Miss Cazalet to Mrs. Bompas, offering her hand.
Goodbye.
Mrs. Bompas, half frightened, shakes hands with her.
Goodbye.
Lady Ripstow, you're looking very old. When Lord Ripstow once did me the honour of calling upon me, he told me that he was a great admirer of young women. Think that over. Good day.
She goes out.
It isn't true. Fiend, it isn't true.
Lady Ripstow.
Dear Lady R.
Lurgishal, where is Lurgishal?
Jelf shows in McShane, who carries a newspaper. Directly Mrs. Hooley sees McShane, she hovers about him persistently.
I see him.
Showing newspaper.
Mr. Bompas, I'll trouble you to look at that. Ah, I see you've seen it. Upon my soul, sir, I'm disheartened. Is this the way you keep a delicate family secret? To think that such an exposure should occur on the very morning the leading papers chronicle your conversion to the Irish party.
Tim.
What's that?
Tim, darling.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm talking to Mr. Bompas on political matters.
To Bompas.
Oh, it makes me sick to contemplate it. Badly as we wanted you, we can't take you with a disgraceful accusation hanging over you. People are so fastidious nowadays. Go away, Kathleen.
Returning to Bompas.
But understand me now. We shan't part with you without a struggle.
To Mrs. Hooley.
I'm speaking privately, ma'am.
To Bompas.
Somehow or other we must bottle the horrible affair up. The party will help. If we don't succeed, sir, I warn you we'll not have you with us. We will not be polluted by you. We'll not... Will you leave us, Kitty? Oh, the vexation this will be to Michael James Shannon. Look here now, ma'am. Oh, the disgust of Joe Finnerty.
Dear Mr. McGass.
Your confidential adviser.
To Mrs. Hooley.
If you don't release my coat, ma'am.
Now I know you've seen the monstrous paragraphs which have appeared this morning.
Seen?
I thought so. But, dear Mr. McShane, I hope you won't need my assurance that those very personal allusions are not intended to refer to our dear friend there at all.
Not intended?
And, what is more, the next, and I believe final, issue of that unhappy journal will tender the humblest apology to the actual family so mercilessly libelled. Some very worthy people of the name of Higginson, I am informed.
McShane to Trimble.
I grasp the move, Mr. Trimble. I understand, sir.
To Bompas.
Well, then I suppose you'll be permitted to make your first contribution to our parliamentary fund in the course of tomorrow. But I'm ashamed of both of you. Oh, the trickery of it. Oh, the... What is it, Kitty?
He retires with Mrs. Hooley.
Percy!
What I have to say, Mr. Bompas, is that, under the circumstances, I deem it my duty not to altogether withdraw my friendship from your family.
Charming.
My old friend Mr. Trimble has hurriedly explained to me the weak but amiable way in which he allowed himself to be dragged into this affair.
I don't regret it.
And I gather that means have been taken to avert disgrace. During the brief remainder of the present season, therefore, we shall exchange greetings upon meeting, as usual.
This is quite delightful. And so things in this really charming house will go on in the same old pleasant routine, just as before.
Just as before.
Just as before.
With the exception, of course.
Oh, dear Lurgershall and of course. Otherwise, just as before.
Mrs. Bompas and Bompas to themselves.
Just as before.
Just as before.
No, no, no!
There is a general movement of surprise. Denham and Beryl enter.
Percy!
Dear E.B.
Bompas to Mrs. Bompas.
Sit down.
Why...
Sit down, old lady. Take a sheet of paper, quick, Clara, and write.
What?
Bompas dictating.
To the editor of The Times, sir.
Mrs. Bompas writes.
What ails him?
Gripping Lady Ripstow's arm.
Kathleen, I beg your pardon.
Turning to Mrs. Hooley.
Kathleen.
Bompas dictating.
Permit me to announce to my constituents through your columns that I intend to immediately resign my seat in the House.
Mrs. Bompas writing.
Percy!
Dear friend.
Mr. Bompas, you are demented.
Bompas to McShane.
Keep away from me! Keep away!
McShane retreating against Lady Ripstow.
Kathleen, I beg your pardon.
To Mrs. Hooley.
Kathleen.
Bompas dictating.
To retire from business and to reside abroad.
Now, dear E.B., I must speak a word.
Ow! Here, Pa!
Upon my soul.
To Lady Ripstow.
Excuse me.
Bompas dictating.
Your obedient servant.
No.
Ring the bell, Clara. Ring the bell.
Mrs. Bompas rings. Bompas writing.
Percy Bompas. No, Egerton. Damn the Egerton.
Oh!
Oh, the vile language!
Bompas addresses and seals the letter.
But, dear E.B., you're undoing all I've done for you. This is practically an admission of everything that's unpleasant.
Absolutely.
Without doubt.
Ah, he's ruining my character for me.
Jelf enters. Bompas to Jelf.
By messenger.
Dear friends, pause. You are fatally compromising me.
Tout, meddler, go between.
My position in society.
Bompas handing the letter to Jelf.
By messenger, at once.
Jelf withdraws.
A confession, and I involved. A confession?
Yes, a confession. Clara, old lady, I've broken down. My head's gone. I can't stand it any longer. Take me away, out of it.
Yes, Percy.
I wasn't always as I am now. It is getting on in the world that has ruined me. I've thought of it all night through. A self-taught man must always be a proud fool. He has a double share of vanity, the vanity of the ready pupil and the vanity of the successful tutor combined. He is blown out till he bursts. I say there ought to be a law to stop men like me from getting on beyond a certain point. Prosperity weakens our brains and hardens our hearts. It takes honest friends from us and seats things like that.
Pointing to Trimble.
In their chairs. It spoils good wives and breeds bad children.
No, Percy. It hasn't utterly spoiled me. I'm tired too. We'll go away together, you and I, old man, to some place where we're not known, and we'll try back. Shall we?
She kneels beside him.
All right, Percy. Cheer up, old man.
Here, Ma, this is a nice blow to my prospects in life.
Come away. You've got me.
McShane to himself.
Well, I suppose I'll explain matters to Michael James Shannon and Mr. Finnerty as best I can. I've done my utmost for the party, and if Mr. Finnerty gives me any of his temper, but I'll not anticipate.
Contemplating Bompas.
Upon my soul, that's a humiliating spectacle. Oh, the moral I could draw from it.
Mrs. Bompas looks round at him fiercely.
Take him away, ma'am, as soon as possible. He's not made of the right material for political life. Oh, what an escape the party's had.
He goes out.
Tim, dear.
She steals out after McShane.
Mr. Trimble. Mr. Trimble.
Oh.
Pray, take me downstairs. Lurgishall has evidently...
I am here, Mother. One moment. Mr. Bompas.
Percy.
Well?
You are going to leave London to live abroad, I hear.
Yes.
There is one duty which I hope you will perform, sir, before you start.
Duty?
A father's duty. To give Beryl to me at our marriage.
Barry?
No, I forbid it.
Lurgishall, after all.
He sways. Denham supports him.
Oh, Lurgishall.
End of Act 4. End of the Times by Arthur Wing Pinero.